All right. Now what date is it? I've lost track.
16th.
Oh, okay, April 16th. 3 hours sleep. April 16th, 2014 meeting of the Norfolk Advisory Committee is hereby called to order. Our agenda tonight is to basically wind up the warrant, any unvoted articles. Jack is here to give us the final budget. We've seen the budget. Unless there's any radical changes, I don't think we'll have any reason for too much discussion about it, but we never know what might come up. So, Jack, you want to, let's see, we've got a few other articles, but I think aside from that, do we have any minutes tonight?
No.
Okay. Then that would be our agenda, just finishing up the warrant.
My first question about the budget, did you do the water budget yet? Or do you need, I don't have the
When-
water budget with me.
When Bob was here, he
Okay,
went over
good.
it.
All right.
Yeah.
So you don't,
Seen it, but I don't believe we
We
voted.
didn't vote it, but we've seen it. Yeah.
Does that include that printer and so?
nah, we threw that out. We took your advice.
I'll tell you, I was gonna send him a
Yeah, no,
PDF on something.
I'd love to see it.
$600.
Yeah. And we threw out the water truck for now too, so, because the selectmen haven't even seen it, so I don't want to go down that path without them seeing it.
All right,
So,
Jack?
Does anybody need a budget? I gave them out last week. I have extras.
Didn't change?
That'd be great.
Yep.
Sorry, I was.
No changes since last week.
Okay.
Wow,
So I've got mine.
Take one.
that's,
Huh.
Thanks.
Should be April 10th on the, or,
Yeah.
I guess on the ones I just handed out, it's April 16th, but
Right.
it should be the same numbers. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Check.
not a tremendous amount of change since the last time I talked to you, although it's balanced now, so, which is good. And I understand from some kind of fallout from last week's meeting, there is a difference between what I had and what the elementary school had. And that is, I've kept my number in there for now. And I talked to Dr. Lardy about that. Because I'm already balanced, we had a discussion about it. She certainly would like to see it go back up to the 4.8 or whatever her number was. I said if between state aid and there's still some KP discussions going on with the other towns, I think between now and town meeting, if there's some improvement in the budget and we can get up to the 4.8, I'd be more than happy to do that. But for now, just because it's balanced and I don't want to create, I didn't want to go back and redo the budget to try and find $50,000. She understood that, and so for now I'm at the 4.25, which actually is the number she gave me back in February. But then their budget committee made some changes. There were some conversations through the selectmen that never got back to me, so that's where we are right now. Just so you know, that's what I have in the budget for today. So I think the last time I talked to you, I had a $149,000 or $139,000 deficit. As we stand today, we're balanced. I started throwing together my slides for town meeting. So I'll kind of hand you out this little highlight sheet that goes along. And I can talk about the high-level things, and then we can get into more detail if you prefer. We're reducing the facilities budget, which is on page 2 of the big sheet. We're reducing that by $28,000. Really, in reality, though, I should reword that and say we're reducing the facilities budget by $103,000, and that's because of the solar credits. Still, we reduced the budget last year by $155,000. We're able, because of the solar credits, to reduce that facilities budget by another $103,000. But what we're recommending that we do is keep $75,000 within the facilities budget, and I have a separate line item in that little pink or gray box that you have on the bottom for facilities maintenance. And it's something we haven't had in the past. But its intended use is for painting. We're looking at this building for this year. We painted it 8 years ago. I was shocked when I realized that, because so this will be the second time painting it in my tenure. We're actually looking at doing some vinyl siding. Bob's going to come back with a vinyl siding proposal for the selectmen to think about. But if you look at the new car wash on 1A, it's kind of a vinyl siding that we like. And so if we can do that, and obviously we want to get something that looks nice, then we won't have to deal with this again for 40 years. So that will not be in my tenure. But the facilities budget would obviously be used for, burner, oil burner replacements, or HVAC fixes or improvements. Hopefully some of the, we've done some of the green improvements in replacing some of these lights. Now we're on to the next generation. We'd like to improve these lights even further and continue to reduce improve our facilities. So again, we reduced the overall the generic facilities budget by $103,000, net being $28,000 reduction, but retaining $75,000 in the facilities for repair. We've funded the planning and development budget to realize the full year funding of the town planner. In the FY14, we have them in for 6 months. This FY15, we have them in for the full 12 months. Same thing with the police officer. We added a police officer last year in January, and we're adding that 18th officer for a full 12 months this year. So you'll see those line items go up a little bit. We added a 13th firefighter, but are pulling some money back out of the callback schedule. So we're adding a day shift officer. Most of the 12 officers today are 24/7. They're on for 2 days out of 8, I think. Yeah. So this person will be a 5-day day shift person. And the reason for doing that is and if you've watched any of this chief making a presentation to the selectmen, is a majority of the callbacks are during the daytime shift. So we're trying to reduce the callback, having to do callbacks, and then also improve our ability to not rely on mutual aid, which isn't a bad thing, but if we can not have mutual aid for the ambulance, that means we can generate revenue generating revenue from the ambulance billing. Which is particularly important this year because we've improved we've actually tripled the fees to the prison. We came to an agreement with the state, and we were below Medicare rate in the past, and now we're at a more market rate. So it's not killing us every time we go to the prison. It's that we're actually making money, if you will, but we're able to retain those funds for an ambulance purchase in the future.
Question about the callback in the fire department. Will hiring the full day shift person bring in a net savings? Or will it be on par with what because you looked at it like that?
I think we're probably still at a just overall budget. I mean, if you...
It sounds like a great thing to do. I'm just wondering if it's a savings or not.
We've tried to budget conservatively right now. We're thinking it's probably still a $20,000 increase in expenses, but we also have that revenue from the ambulance, which doesn't go back into the budget. It's reserved for future appropriation. So it's I wish I could just tell you right off the bat it's a reduction in the budget. It's not.
Thank you.
We're hoping that if there's any more additions to the fire department, Cole, I'm sure is probably watching and on his way here, if I'm not mistaken. But any additions in the future will be on the call staff rather than in the full-time department. And this is necessary. It's an ongoing story, and I know most of you have probably heard fire department staffing for years and years. I know I have. But really, the change in the staffing of the department, unfortunately, the callback staff isn't there. Whether I'm talking about off-duty personnel or the callback staff themselves. The full-time staff, we have hired a lot of paramedics over the last few years, and unfortunately, they're not located in Norfolk or abutting towns, they're distances away. So our callback, our ability to call people in on a short notice has been hampered tremendously over the last few years. So that's why we've gone with the strategy of adding the daytime officer who will, be here for the majority of our calls. Final note on the municipal highlights, we've talked about before, we added $25,000 to snow and ice, and that's really a $50,000 improvement to snow and ice because I think I talked about it with you. We moved some of the vehicle maintenance expenses out of the snow and ice that we're going to be posting to the snow and ice budget next year, and we made that, we increased the budget in the DPW vehicle maintenance budget. So when we're doing a lot of our prep work on the plows and the sanders next year, getting the trucks ready for battling the snow and ice, that will actually be posted into the DPW budget rather than the snow and ice budget. So this, you'll see the line item for snow and ice go up by $25,000, but you'll also, not that you'll really be able to see it, but in actuality, we'll be taking $25,000 of expenses that were previously posted to snow and ice, posting them into the DPW budget. So we're improving the snow and ice budget by $50,000 for next year, which, given the deficit this year, is good news. The other page I gave you just because it made, Lisa, sorry. Oh, I handed around the pile. Is there any more of these?
Yeah, I can just share with
Okay.
them. I can get it after. Thanks.
Oh, that would be great.
Just the commentary. I just kind of left the slide there and crossed off a couple that don't still apply, but really the reality of the budget hasn't changed all that much. The budget conditions are tight, particularly if you look at the employee benefits. We increased those very little because we're shrinking the amount of cushion, if you will, in those budgets. So I get nervous that we have little less and less room for error. But we think having said that, I think we've budgeted appropriately, but there's just, I will show you transfers in a little while, and we've got $200,000 coming out of the employee benefits budget this year, and because I didn't increase that much this upcoming year, we won't have any room for doing that next year. Local aid was that was my comment last year. What is the reality? I think because there's been a resolution this year, we're comfortable with what the state is going to provide for local aid, and that's reflected in the revenues. Chapter 90, we're budgeted for $390,000 this year. We were budgeted for, I think, $360,000 this past year, but only received about 2/3 of that money. I'm hoping that doesn't happen again. The legislature approved $360,000, and then the governor only released about 2/3 of that. So I have a letter from him this year telling me he's going to release $390,000, so we'll see. The public safety building is still unimproved. We'll talk about that in Article 37 a little bit, but that's still the reality. Is the public safety building is less than desirable. Budget concerns is not as much as a problem as it was last year. Last year we used $450,000 of free cash to, $350,000 plus $97,000 from stabilization to support the budget. This year we're down to $150,000, so that's actually heading in the right direction. And then the budget hope. New growth is. I was proven wrong last year. We beat our new growth. We budgeted, I think it was originally $450,000, and we reached $650,000. So, given that trend, I budgeted $700,000 this year. So that is hopefully not overly optimistic. I think the rest of our revenues there was no significant jump like that, other than motor vehicle. We went from $1,350,000 to $1,450,000. But I think based on what we're looking at the month-to-month actuals on the motor vehicle excise, that we should be able to reach that number. So new growth is a little.
Jack, on your new growth comment, did you mean in FY13 you beat it by 200,000? And so you upped the budget in 14?
I don't have in front of me what we actually budget in,
Well, we have 650 in the budget for the current fiscal year.
well, that's the only actual, and I know the top of the column does say budget, so.
Oh, but that one's an
you're
actual
making that
day.
assumption.
Sorry.
And I apologize for the mistitle. But when the.
This is more your forecast?
Yeah,
Okay.
when the new growth comes in, I always plug that number in there.
Gotcha.
Just so we have,
Okay.
we know what the reality is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so this fiscal year, we received $650,000.
Okay.
So when you see that switch from a nice round number to a precise number, that's when that's happening. So that's from my perspective anyway, the gist of the budget, other than things I've told you in the past. I'd be happy to answer.
One more comment on revenue, and it relates to your front municipal highlight sheet. So your next to last bullet says, we have the firefighter. It says improved ambulance coverage and revenue, but it looks like our ambulance receipts, are they the same, or we're only transferring out the same? You've got 280.
We're only transferring out
280.
the same. So that's not the actual revenue.
What was our ending balance, so to speak, or where do you think the ending balance will be in the ambulance receipts account?
At the end of, March, we were getting close to what we had projected for the year, which was about $350,000. So we should be upwards of easily $400,000 of revenue this year. So there would be money in the, at the end of this year, there will be a balance in the ambulance receipts, which hopefully we can keep for purchase of an ambulance in the future.
Oh, okay, because I was wondering, why not, if we're increasing our costs in the operating budget, why not increase the transfer in the ambulance receipts, and then you'd reduce your reliance on free cash?
We could, but I'd like to,
But
I'd like to try and keep
If
the money
you're
in the ambulance
trying to
fund.
accumulate enough balance in the ambulance fund to purchase another ambulance, I mean, that's, I suppose that's a strategy. I suppose the other alternative is borrow the money and then it flows through the operating budget that way, so.
Yep.
Multiple pockets.
It's, how much is an ambulance now?
Right.
New ambulance, 3, 4, 500,000?
I know it's
gone up
I'm thinking at least 3, yeah, close to 3.
Doesn't it depend if you reuse the cab somehow?
Yeah.
Right.
I'll believe that when it happens, Arlie, huh? Sorry, Cole.
You don't want to be in that
So when
ambulance,
you're
though.
accumulating it, what do you have in there to accumulate it by now? Anything? Or would this be the first amount that you're accumulating for it?
I'll go check that balance when you guys go off on some, I don't know off the top of my head, I don't know, just make a number up, so you guys get on to
But is
another
there,
article.
there is something that
Yep.
this would add to? Okay.
Yeah, it's not a huge pot of money, but
Well, I'm just asking to say,
yeah,
is this the beginning
probably
of the
less than
end of
$100,000 or so
Okay.
in there at the beginning
But
of
with
last
this,
year.
with it, that's, puts you in a good,
Yeah, we're getting, I'm going to think we're going to have, my top of my head, I think we'll probably at the end of this year have $200,000 after we take this money out.
At the end of 14?
Yeah.
I got a couple of presentation points here. Last year, this request column wound up going out in the mailing and being handed out at town meeting, and that generally has not
Right.
been the case, as I recall, and it also generated questions and discussion about why did this request not
Yeah.
get, why was this request changed or whatever, and I don't really think that's particularly relevant to the discussion of the budget at town meeting. I would suggest simply hiding those columns or deleting them or
Deleting
whatever
them,
when they get
yeah.
printed.
So wanna
Yeah,
keep-
I would agree, because that's really just early budget discussion, not necessarily what we would want to do or could afford to do, and, yeah.
And the second point is, you remember last year, one person put about 20 holes on different articles, and it was the same reason. He really only had one question. and that was how much of the increase in personnel is attributable to number of bodies and how much is attributable to increases. So if there would be a way to get that information out front, I mean, even if you could get it to me so I could put it in the letter that
Okay.
goes,
Because he'll
I
be
could
back.
write it.
Yeah,
I
you
could-
will.
I could
With
put
the
it in
same
my
question.
discussion of the budget increases, and that way the information would already be out there before the town meeting, and maybe we could avoid all those multiple holds on the articles.
Yeah,
There's probably three numbers if we're going to do that, so that it kind of makes sense. It's almost like a retail number. It's the increase in same-store sales, so this would be the increase in people who were in the budget the full year. Then there's the cost of somebody who joined halfway, like the town planner. I mean, it's a whopping increase in the salaries, but nothing's changing. We made the commitment and hired them partway through the year. So probably it's the year-over-year salary increase piece, the the rest of a body who joined partway through the year, and then
Yep.
new hires. I think if we had, number of heads and dollars associated with each of those, that would go a long way to helping people understand the budget.
Stemming
I'd
questions,
lump the
yeah.
last two together. I mean, putting a half a body out there all by itself, we would just say
Oh, that's
we
the only, if
increased-
there's only one, then,
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose you could put
we
the
just say
two together.
it's 2.5 instead
Yeah,
of
yeah,
2,
yeah.
and,
I would agree.
it's a
Keep it
2.5
simple.
number.
Yes,
but in any event, that's just a matter of presentation, so.
yeah.
Yeah, if we
Jack,
could, if we could do that, I think we could.
One quick one that may or may not actually impact the budget. Back in your pink column of informational items, unless your detail doesn't add, which I didn't do that, your pink box adds up to 506, but your budget says 525.
Yeah, you're right.
Which looks like it's...
Looks like the request column is correct. but not the-
Exactly, yes.
So I probably have,
So you picked up 19 grand.
I did.
It's always helpful.
So now you're at
Give 'em
one...
a couple minutes,
Now
see if
you're at
he finds any
130.
more.
Now you're at 130 on free cash. We're rolling.
Oh, that's a good idea. I'll just take it out of free cash.
Yeah. Well, I think the least we could take out of free cash, the better, because most likely we'll need it again next year for snow and ice,
snow and
so.
Could I ask two questions? One is on the transfer station revenue, which of course matches the transfer station expenses, but we observed a big increase between 13 and 14. I presume partially because the additional recycling was in place for a part of the year? But now it appears to decline. I wonder, is that because the cost of the transfer station decline, or is it because we actually expect transfer station revenue to decline?
Harley? So you're talking about going from the,
Yeah, if you just look at the revenue.
401 down to
402
388.
down to 389, yeah.
we had some one-time expenses in the budget last year. We were doing some work at the transfer station on the building that's there where the guy watching the people throwing the bags. is.
Yeah.
And then we had, I'm not sure if that also included the compactors.
I thought the compactors we did on a capital.
Yeah, I think they were capital.
Yeah, that was a lease, 3-year
Jack.
something lease thing.
Is transfer station revenue another revolving account? That
It's
you?
not.
No, okay,
No.
all right, so it really should represent how much we expect to take in, okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if you were treating it the same way like ambulance receipts type of a thing.
No,
Okay.
we treat it as a local revenue
Yeah,
and
yeah.
treat it as a regular budget item. We
Right.
try to,
Make sure we're,
when Bob makes his presentation, he's got some additional expenses in the budget that, so at the end of the day, we try to make it a enterprise-like fund. And at some point, we may want to make it an enterprise fund, but it doesn't seem to have reached the dollar threshold to really
Yeah.
be concerned with that. So I guess the answer to my question, Arlie, is I think we had some one-time costs in the budget last year.
Last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're no longer expecting to have.
Do you think we're going to hit the 402 number this year? 'Cause somewhat on the surface, I wouldn't really, given all the stuff Bob's doing there, I wouldn't really anticipate that the revenue would go down.
Right,
No, I think he's optimistic that the budget, that the revenues are going to continue to rise.
Right.
And it's hard for me to say right now for this year just because we get so much revenue in the last couple of months. All I can tell you is that I'm optimistic that we're gonna beat the 401, but
Okay.
really it's the peak of our season right now when people are buying all those materials and then they'll be renewing their stickers.
Yeah, so it's probably hard to tell today.
But from a presentational perspective, anyway, if I wanted to see revenue for the transfer station, because if I understand you correctly, you just said that this is basically cost.
No,
The
that's real
401?
revenue. You just said that it's real
On
revenue.
the revenue, on this year?
Yeah.
It's revenue.
That's real dollars.
Okay, but then the rise in costs last year doesn't account for the increase in revenue last year.
You shouldn't really listen to what I say, you should listen to what I mean.
I was just trying to just get beneath it, get beneath the words. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, it's just, I think that at one point there were expectations of increases in revenue because of the expanded services at the transfer station and
Yep.
the expanded recycling, and I think that's good news, and we should be able to see it somewhere, but,
There are some differences between this expense budget and if you look at Bob's full-blown transfer station budget, in two pieces. One is the health insurance costs. We don't carry those costs here. And the other, but he carries them on his presentation. And then the debt service that we assigned to the transfer station a number of years ago, we don't carry it here, but carry it in the debt service, but he carries it on his presentation, and that's about $11,000. So I'm having a little bit of a problem reconciling, in a perfect world, the revenue number from 14 to 15 would match my expense number from 14 to 15, but I don't have all those pieces, those two pieces, so it sounds like I'm saying one thing, and one is sliding down, the other's sliding up, so it depends on which one you're looking at. And sometimes when I say the expenses are going down, it's because I don't have the whole piece in front of me.
The second question is, and when we put the solar in, we had one set of expectations about reimbursements and how that was all going to be handled, and then I think it changed altogether during the process. But somehow the elementary schools got, this is again my recollection, so correct me if I'm wrong, the elementary schools with solar cells on the roof kept the credits in the elementary school budget. Is that recollection correct?
Yeah, I believe their meter actually spins backwards from the solar, so they're getting a benefit that way, versus because ours aren't rooftop,
Right.
we have to go through the net metering process, which means that we end up getting credits on a month delay. So there's a little bit of difference between the two. The other component that the elementary school has is they'll be able to sell the SRECs. And those will have to be, that revenue will have to be subject to appropriation, so that won't just stay in the elementary budget. That'll come in as miscellaneous revenue at some point. I would think probably coming up this year, but we'll show that on the tax rate recap as miscellaneous revenue. If we decide we need to appropriate that in the fall, we could do that, or just let it go to free cash at some time in the future.
And do you recall or have any idea about how much that might be?
I'm thinking it's $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Hope I'm right. I think that's the number.
Pretty significant.
Boy,
Yeah,
Pretty good.
yeah, it's a good
more
number.
questions, we could be down to zero.
Yeah, I was
free
gonna
cash
say.
here, Jack. You could add
get
20,
the roads
you could
done.
add 20 to 30 to miscellaneous, you could up the transfer station revenue. I mean, well, though, that's where it's a little bit of a, if you're conservative in the revenue budget, by default, it's going to fall to free cash, so you won't be technically using the 150 anyway, so I think as long as the free cash number's not too crazy, it's probably not a bad thing. If we're conservative on the revenue and estimate a little bit of free cash. if we need it to get to the budget.
It might come up with regard to the capital budget.
In terms of,
Borrowing
why
versus-
use the free cash in the operating plan? Why not save it all for capital? Yeah.
Another question, on the 75,000 facilities budget, I think that's fantastic that there's a budget for repairs like that. Is that for all municipal buildings, library, everything?
Yep, it would be, all municipal buildings.
Now, I don't want to speak against, of course, the small interests of the advisory board, but at some point, our budget, our 50,000 was used because of repairs, anticipating repair requirements. Are we over budgeted now, given the new 75?
Oh, is our budget too high?
Yeah, the 50,000 that goes,
How much have we used of the reserve this year?
Just the 8,000 as far as I know.
Yeah.
I know it all rolls back, but I just wonder,
I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
there is an
see how it
element,
goes.
we used
knock on wood,
to,
we haven't had an emergency,
Sure.
but, the veterans agent can go through some money pretty quickly.
Sure.
On occasion.
We had those two back injuries a few years ago that chewed up 35 grand in 1 year, so.
quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
So our last 4 years would be 0, 0, 11, and this year we're at 8. So 50 would certainly seem more than enough. I mean, for many years, we were at 25, and then probably around 08, 09.
that was where we put the insurance.
Yes,
basically.
we added to it.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
But it was higher at one point, wasn't it? Didn't it go up to the 75, 80 range for a year or so?
I think it was in a budget, but then it came off, is my
Yeah,
recollection.
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
All this free cash discussion reminds me, no thought to stabilization fund transfer this spring. That issue didn't come up, or
I
that
fought
couldn't-
for that, but the selectmen didn't put it on the budget, on the warrant. No, I don't, the fact that we're still using free cash, and we'll still have a snow and ice deficit. I actually have some transfers for you to look at, to think about, so that I wouldn't be handing them to you 10 minutes before town meeting. But we'll still have a deficit for snow and ice that we'll have to raise in the fall, so. Maybe 20,000 smaller deficit than I thought. So I can't see going to stabilization yet.
I wasn't totally serious, but the
Yeah.
issue was pushed pretty hard in the fall, and seems to have just quietly died.
Jack, was there
Buried
any,
under the snow.
Well said.
was there any desire not to use any free cash in the budget, or the selectmen and yourself are comfortable with the 150, or? 'Cause I don't know, we've ticked off 4 or 5 items, and
They didn't want to use any free cash.
on the one hand, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it would be incredibly hard to get to 0.
We're down to 130.
I think one minor one that, I had some follow-up after the Norfolk school presentation last week. I had some follow-up emails with Dr. Alardi on some of the budget questions. I went through it in a little more detail afterward and had some questions. But one of the items was, there's 25K in the budget related to the, reducing the charge from benefits for the cafeteria.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah, I started to write back to you. I didn't get
Yeah.
to finish that email.
yeah, so, I mean, personally, in the final budget, I would take the 25 out of the schools and put it into the benefits, since traditionally we keep all the benefit costs in one pool. It seems odd to charge out to another budget 25K of our benefit costs. I mean, it was fine to put it in there while we're making sure the dust will settle, but
Yeah.
now that all the budgets are set, I mean, it seems just a waste of time through the year to really transfer 25,000.
The way, well, it's a little different, and I get what you're saying. That one's a little different. It's not like a full-time school employee, a teacher, et cetera, because the the school cafeteria is a revolving fund.
Right.
So, the cafeteria, the water department
Okay.
are all those benefits are
So you don't
charged.
really view that as a benefits charge per se. You're going to charge the revolving fund, but theoretically, the school can then move that 25 to cover the deficit in the you would view it more as a revolving fund deficit recovery amount in their budget.
Yeah, what the school.
Because they're not charging enough to cover the cost of the school lunches.
Correct. The school's closing a revolving fund deficit at the end of the year.
With that amount, as
Yeah.
opposed to you're transferring benefit dollars into their budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes, okay, all right. Under that scenario, I
So-
would agree.
So we do that with all, just, with pension costs,
Yeah, yeah.
everything.
Right,
We charge
right.
those to
So
any.
if we have a separate fund,
Yep.
that's, which makes sense. Okay, all right. Retract that idea. Plus, I think it makes sense that, we have a shortfall in the school lunch, and that's just part of the school budget, if that's how they choose to spend money that's allocated to them.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on school cafeteria.
Right, exactly. So,
Other questions, discussion?
well,
About the budget?
just to wrap up, so Jack, you were saying there was a desire not to use any free cash, and I still think there could be some money in the Norfolk schools budget that if it was less, wouldn't really impact the quality of education and would wipe out the remaining difference if you added in a couple of the small revenue things.
You're referring to this difference in the special
Well, in
education?
particular, right, we had that discussion at the meeting about how much money was being effectively transferred into the KP system because of out-of-district students moving from 6th to 7th grade. And ultimately, the amount that KP had presented was correct. It's $412,000 coming out of Norfolk and going into KP's budget. But the budget's only going down by 200 because they have some contingencies that they want to make sure are covered, et cetera. So it's not totally unreasonable, but there's a decent chance all of that won't come to pass. So I feel like we've established like a max exposure in that one as opposed to a kind of a best estimate of what might happen. So. But alternatively, I don't think 100 to 150 is that big of a deal. It was just more, I think there's opportunity if the selectmen and you were really inclined to present a truly balanced number with no free cash usage.
Yeah, I guess opining on the school budget, depending on the year, either gets me into a lot of trouble or or not. And Ingrid and I have a very good relationship. I just look at the last couple of years of the elementary school budget. They have not, they've been good partners. I sat through and talked about those special ed costs with her and feel comfortable that they're
Yeah.
not outrageous.
Yeah. Well, and I think if the idea, we got to set aside for contingencies, and if the contingencies don't come to pass and the money flows back into free cash, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't think, but if we take the money identified for out-of-district tuitions and spend it on whatever else, that doesn't quite feel right. But, so from that perspective, I agree, because, as we were talking earlier, the out-of-district's unexpected can really whack you on a budget perspective.
And just to get myself into trouble, I struggle with, that budget, which really has gone through a process that started off here and ended up, here, versus the KP budget, which every year, it's just such a frustrating process to go through. It throws my whole budget into disarray, starting off at a 13% increase, and then coming down to 4, and that still may not be the problem, but that's that's because we're in a tri-town
Right, yeah, I think there's.
district.
So,
I just think it's, there, you know, and I'm not the first to say this, there's a credibility problem when you started. Some years it's starting at 23% and coming down to 4 or 7, like we did last year. It's challenging.
yeah.
Buy KP North and take over the schools, have Norfolk take over all the schools.
See, I would argue the opposite. Make a K through 12 regional district, and
That would be the cheaper version,
Yes.
cheaper way to get out of it. But the developmental, and, you know, you can see, if we took over KP North as a school, and I know this is unrealistic, but if we took it over as our school, made it our high school or our middle school, Norfolk would become Medfield overnight. We would have people wanting to come here in droves and paying big money for our land and our homes. And it'll never happen.
Then we could
but-
do the stretch.
Yeah.
And then we could do
We
the
could do the
stretch.
stretch.
You know,
Make everybody happy.
The MCAS scores at the elementary school are outstanding.
What happens when you go to the middle school?
they're good.
So the topic at hand.
They're above average.
I'm asking because I don't know.
Yeah,
They are good?
yeah.
I think Dave just makes a point. I agree with you. I think it doesn't feel as transparent as it could. Just to your point.
Right.
I'm in support of what's going on. It just doesn't feel transparent.
Yeah, I think that your point last year, I talked to you about it, was that because it's a tri-town school system, it's not, we don't pay attention to it as much as we do our own system. So kind of all 3 towns are kind of like, well, somebody else will take care of it, and it gets to be difficult to follow what it is they are doing. And I know whether they're taking advantage of it or whether we're just not paying attention enough, you know, because it's not really ours.
Yeah, but that's
It's-
unfortunate people think that way, because it is ours.
It is ours.
That is our
but-
high school, that is our middle school. I mean, and if people don't think that way, they're not really thinking it through correctly.
Like that never happened. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Dick Robot, superintendent, he used to talk about, it was one of his mantras was that it is ours. We should all have green and gold town colors. And I agree. I'd like to, personally, I'd like to go one way or the other. This being stuck with 2 school districts is, from a budgetary point of view and from, not just for me, but for the whole process, is bad. Problem with going, I've been an advocate of going K through 12 with King Philip. The problem with that financially is we pay $1,000 more per student than the other 2 towns do because of the economics that are built into the minimum local contribution. So that would just kill us if all of a sudden we had to pay $1,000 more per student for the elementary school kids than Rentham and Plainville did. So that, we'd have to figure that out before
Does
going
that-
there.
Excuse me, will that change at all with the casino in Plainville now? I mean, does that contribute to helping us?
If their average income goes up,
It's per capita income.
Yeah.
And that may actually
Yeah.
be
Property value?
negatively.
and property values, they're
yeah,
both
both
factors.
factors.
All right.
In Plainville.
Yeah, and property values is the other component. If their average property values go up, that'd be
Yeah.
great.
I think that would push them down, though.
Yeah, it would.
Could.
Incomes up, property values down would be my guess as to the outcome.
Possibly.
Jack, 2 comments in your commentary. I think the town should recognize the foresight of the selectmen and everyone who pushed for the solar cells and the success of that installation in bringing a lot more money into the town and creating a significantly enhanced buffer for unanticipated expenses. I think maybe the tone of that first bullet is a little negative, and as I say, I think that acknowledging the significant contribution that you and everyone else made to get that solar panel site into place is certainly something bears repeating.
Yeah, without a doubt, I agree. I mean, that's been a wildly successful project.
And unfortunately, the revenues are a bit hidden because they're an expense offset.
Yep.
So I think perhaps even mentioning that at some point in the presentation is.
Yeah, I can, Be happy to. Thank you.
Further questions? So this is final, Jack, yes? As far as you're concerned, this is
As
what
far
we're
as I'm
voting on?
concerned, and selectmen don't meet again until May 1st, so.
I mean, there's always the possibility that we'll have something tweaked the night of town meeting, but to your knowledge, at this point, there's nothing of that nature that's in the works. And if we were to vote on this tonight, if someone were to make a motion, why then?
Jack,
We're doing so in
before we do that,
anticipation.
To finish, Jack, did you say you had transfer stuff?
I do.
Do you want to
That's separate from the budget, though, yes?
Yeah.
take action on the budget? I move to recommend approval of the budget as printed.
Would you
Do I need to read out the numbers?
specify an amount, please? Yes.
Ooh.
Just so we make sure we have
Yeah.
precisely the right amount in the motion itself.
So you want the revenue, what do you want me to read out, the revenue and the expenses,
Just
or?
the expenses.
Yeah, we don't, town meeting doesn't have to vote on the
Just the
revenue.
total operating budget, I think will
Yes.
do it. The,
You'll,
So you gotta take out.
That would be the 34,661?
19,645.
I recommend that the move to approve expending $34,640,000, subject to final revision based on Jack's current calculation.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded that we have a slightly fuzzy number for our budget, but
Oh, come on,
That's
that was
all
pretty
right.
close.
if we feel the necessity, we can nail it down later. But the motion, in fact, will
Yes.
present the exact amount.
34,611,463.
61463.
34,661,463.
No.
No.
No,
No? Sorry.
no, I may have read the wrong numbers.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did.
34, 64 something, right?
Yeah. 34,641,463.
Yeah.
463.
So could I amend my motion to say recommend approval of expenses totaling $34,641,463?
Second.
Moved and seconded for a budget of the amount specified. I won't repeat it again because I couldn't if I wanted to. Any further discussion on the budget? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We have a budget. You had transfers for us, Jeff.
I do, although they're just draft, so I would
Yep.
request that you hold off voting on them until the night of town meeting, but
Yeah, it's
hopefully they won't
just-
change.
The benefit is getting the discussion on the night of town meeting to as small a number of items as we can. So to the extent we can take care of things tonight, even if it's just educational, that's a plus.
Absolutely.
So the first big chunk there above the asterisks is trying to close the snow and ice deficit, which as of today stands at, well, before yesterday, 455,659. It's on the next page if you want to look at the snow and ice. Sorry, the commas aren't there. Makes it hard for me to read it anyway. So the first part is, and Julie, the town accountant, put this together. So she's identified some areas in the budget, employee benefits, finance salaries, planning board expense account, and building and liability insurance, along with $50,000 in free cash, which we could probably make some improvements on that, we can talk about in a minute. So generating $307,000 to move towards the snow and ice deficit. We have a $811 deficit in fiscal year 13 abatements. So property tax abatements ran over budget. So we need a deficit that we need to close. So we moved almost $307,000 to the snow and ice deficit. The second item is just, we have a snow and ice revolving account, and that's where developers, for unaccepted roads, if they want the town to plow the road, we set up a budget for them and charge them by the inch of snow. And we put that money into a revolving account and we pay the gas bills for contractors out of that revolving account, but then the surplus at the end of the year, really, it's what it would be is the cost of the trucks and employee salaries, et cetera. So we always end up with a surplus in that account that we now need to transfer back to the snow and ice deficit in this case.
This is number 2 of Article 14?
Yeah, the 16,000.
Oh, which revolving fund is
Yeah,
it?
the one we renew in Article 14?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
Do you have a copy of this? I'm sorry.
I do, I believe Dave knows what he's talking about. The bottom one is one that I'm sure you'll want to talk about a little bit, is we have a project that we'd like to kick off this summer, and it's to replace, we have, when we renewed the Comcast licensing contract last year, they required us to get off of we have an old iLoop. It's an old coax cable loop that connects all the buildings, and we have historically used that for data transfer between the buildings. As part of our licensing agreement with Comcast, and because of the age of the coax, which goes back probably 15 years, we want to get off that loop as well. So we'd like to replace that. We've got a state bid project, state bid quote for a project to replace that. It will probably actually be a gross cost of about $90,000. We're now negotiating with NCTV to pay for part of that because they'll also transmit part of their broadcasts on that same fiber. So we're hoping that they'll share $25,000 to $30,000 of that cost. So the net cost of the town should be in the neighborhood of $65,000, maybe as low as $60,000. So this underground utilities account is back about 10 years ago when we buried the utilities, got rid of the telephone poles in the center of town. We had a project that was partially funded by debt and partially funded by, well, really just funded by debt. There was a surcharge going on another part of the project. But we ended up with a surplus at the end of that project of $129,000. So Julie's recommending here that we move that balance, because that project is done, into the fiber optic loop project. It doesn't have to, we don't have to move all of that if you or someone else doesn't want to do that. We could actually just move the $90,000. The thought she had is let's just move the whole balance, do that project, and then we'll have a balance left in that account rather than having balances in two different places. But as I say, the fiber project should be about $60,000 to $65,000 of net cost to the town. And that allows all of our data transfer between the buildings, including public safety, library, town hall, COA, DPW, will all be connected by fiber. Will actually allow us to reduce some ongoing costs. We now have, because the coax cable can't handle our data transfer, the last couple of years we've added Comcast or Verizon connections, depending on the building, to each of those. So we're connecting through virtual private networks or other networks so that each building is reaching out to the internet. So we're going to be able to eliminate all of that. And actually, the fiber will go to the school as well. So we're going to end up with just live internet connections at the schools. For redundancy, we'll have one at each school, and then the municipal buildings will all connect through the fiber and get out to the internet through the schools. This also has all of our phone, we have voice over internet protocol phones here, and so that all of the data on the voice data travels over that right now through the coax or through the Comcast internet. We're going to move that all over to the fiber as well. So we're looking to save, it's like $130 per building per month that we'll be able to knock out. There's also some hardware costs. We'll be able to cut down the number of firewalls that we have, so some ongoing capital costs that we'll be able to eliminate in the future. I can have actually Bob Bullock and Michael Yang kind of and have them speak to that. They can come to your next meeting if it's a town meeting. They can give you a quick update or send you out some information if you'd like more on that project.
Jack, I'm just curious, who oversees the technology decisions on things like this in the town? Is there a group that does that? Like we have a advisory board? I'm not aware of it.
We don't have an IT committee. We have probably back 8 or 10 years ago we had an IT committee. We have an IT director now, gentleman Michael Yang.
Yeah, we saw Michael the last meeting, yeah.
Oh yeah, he came and turned on some stuff for you. He works for us and for the school, elementary. We'd be happy to form a committee if you want to be on the.
I was thinking, I bet you'd get a lot of volunteers within the town. IT people love to just talk about stuff that they know, you know, and.
They do.
I mean, I'm the least knowledgeable about a lot of that stuff, but there's a lot of people that really like to do that. It's.
Jack, it seems like on some level, though, we're really making two decisions with your last transfer there. I mean, in reality, we didn't spend all the money in the underground utilities. We could take the $129,000 and pay down the debt associated with the underground utility.
Can't.
So you can't do that.
We have to apply it to state law on revenues that are from debt projects have to be applied to a different project. So you have to find a project of similar length. We've been through this, a lot of times.
No,
It's
an interesting concept in the sense of you either permanently have money sitting in a cash account that you can't do anything with until you figure out some other project that might.
Smells the same.
Yeah, it smells roughly the same. So we
Yeah.
could either go bury some more underground utilities somewhere in town, or do something like this.
Yeah, they have to have
And
an-
this would
Is it
qualify
that
as a
specific?
similar usage?
It's got to be,
Or
it's
is it
got to be
length
a
of time?
length of time. It's got to be,
Relative to the length of the debt type of, is
Yeah,
that
so
the
you-
qualification?
so it doesn't have to, this just happens to be
Yeah,
an underground or a utility. It's not going to
Right.
all be underground.
I forgot, how long did we was the utility, was that a 10-year borrowing or longer, 20? Can't remember.
It's probably a 10-year because it's off the, I think if it's off the book, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. You can, I don't know. It's at least 15, because it's still on in
Yeah.
21. Might be 20.
But that's, regardless of the debt service that still exists, whether or not that existed or not, the fact that we have debt proceeds sitting in an account.
Right, yeah, no, yeah.
Where does NCTV get the revenue for a piece of the pie like that? Is that part of the deal with the cable company?
So 5% of yours, mine, and everybody else's cable bill goes to NCTV, for whether it's Verizon or Comcast. And then in addition to that, they get, when we sign those, they get a capital fund from the cable companies. It's about $50,000.
But it is the duration, not the use of the funds, that is the
key parameter.
The key parameter.
Huh. It's another interesting odd concept in
Massachusetts.
in government.
Because this has come up before, and it.
Yeah, now
the
I remember
discussion
some
has
other
been-
discussion a while back,
the
and
Yeah, we
discussion has
didn't, we
been,
tend to,
uh,
like, take a bunch of
project of
money that we
similar
borrowed for
nature.
cars and
Right.
pool all those together and put them towards a future car, to kind of reduce the new debt service.
Your initial question was about the fact that, A, we're moving money around, and B, we're moving it to fiber optic loop. Did I understand you
yeah, well,
correctly?
I thought we were effectively making two decisions. You know, take money we had in the underground utilities, and instead of paying down the associated debt with underground utilities, we'll spend it on a different capital project.
Mhm.
Whereas it's really,
No choice.
the money is there. It's kind of like, ultimately, the money is already spent. It's just finding an appropriate project that it can be spent on. There's no way to get the money back.
I was all fired up to use it for snow and ice deficit, and then
That would have been so perfect.
Julie reminded me that we
Park
can't
Street.
do that. Yeah. Or
Yeah, I would have thought you could at least
I
pay
don't want
down
it
the
to take
debt
that
you
long to
borrowed
fix Park
associated with the
Street.
project.
But this would
We
then
can
have
bury
to
the
come from
utilities over
somewhere
there on
else,
Park
so-
Street.
Yeah.
What's that?
This would then have to come from
Oh,
somewhere
sure,
else.
yeah. If we
so
wanted to do the
we'll just-
project, we'd have to
it's
fund it
all,
with debt.
as the
so,
saying goes, fungible.
Yeah,
So essentially, by approving the transfer, you're approving the expenditure.
the project, yes,
Project.
yes.
Right. Which sounds like you're
Right.
going to reduce operating costs and improve efficiency and create, optimize the technology that's available today. It sounds like a really great thing to do. I think that the question that this, this conversation brings to mind is, well, if we're then, this sounds like a good project, but what were the other good projects on the
Right,
list? But
right.
by choosing this, we're in essence saying we're not going to do those
Do
other
Right.
something
things.
else.
Right.
Yeah, that's really, was
Yeah.
there some other choices, Jack? Or this has been sitting there for years, waiting for an appropriate project to spend, so to speak?
We were hoping to go forward with the fiber optic project regardless, and possibly, like at the end of next year, if that money in the facilities budget hadn't gone to some major repair, we were hoping to kind of earmark on that at the end of FY15. So this was something that we've definitely, and there are a lot of, this will help us do some things that we haven't been able to do in the past, like we have a camera system here that now we'll be able to have that data streamed directly to the police station so that the dispatchers can monitor this building. Leaving meetings late at night, we'll now have the ability to do something as simple as calling down to dispatch and say, can you just monitor the parking lot camera while I walk out to my car? That kind of thing would be able to happen. Also, backups now. We are backing up on servers internally here, and then occasionally taking things off-site. Michael will be able to improve that dramatically and have backups, probably at the Freeman Kennedy School. We'll back up all of our data over there. Same thing with public safety. They'll back up, to a separate location automatically so that we don't have to rely on periodic physical movement of data. So it'll be,
You said about $130 a month per building. How many buildings? 4?
DPW, COA, library, town hall, public safety, those will be able to be eliminated.
So it's like $7,500 a year, so.
And including the new, what do they call it, MEQA, CEQA, the new potential police
Yeah,
department?
they're their own budget.
MREC, that's it,
That
yeah.
you would include that in this network you're building.
Probably not running fiber all the way down. We've talked about trying to go with fiber down to the middle school, and that's like another 75,000. So this would be at least that much to go down there.
The state would pay for that anyway.
Yeah,
So you wouldn't have to budget that year.
No.
part of that, yeah, they're talking about doing 5. They are talking about I should back up. Rick's right. The Metro project, the Metacomet project, the regional communication project, they're talking about having fiber between all the public safety buildings. So Norfolk Public Safety, Plainville, Franklin, Rentham, Franklin Police and Fire, and then wherever the Metacomet Dispatch Center is, which will hopefully be in Norfolk. And my technology is probably far below Al's, to say the least. But there will be fiber at the public safety building on that loop, and there will be fiber on this loop. So whether or not, if we wanted to connect the two, But I think the important thing is the public safety and the dispatch center will be able to fiber back and forth, if you will.
So, to Angela's question, did you have any other potential projects for that money, or there really hasn't been, like, nothing in the capital that could qualify as well?
But a building,
Yeah.
Like a building?
A small dent in a building?
Small dent
Well, I
in
mean-
public safety building.
it matches the duration, right? Is that,
It's got to match or exceed, so yeah, I mean, you probably would be appropriate to move it towards a building.
Are there many more of these kinds of funds out there? Sort of funds sitting in account waiting for a home?
Unexpended debt
Oh, yeah.
projects?
For projects.
It's wonderful.
Nothing of
think
this
it's-
magnitude. There,
Nothing of that, okay.
yeah, there's, you know, the last couple of years when we bought vehicles, there's always a couple $1,000s left, and we generally try to, in the motions, we'll gather up those little pots of money and move them into
But
to
nothing
reduce the new
this
debt.
sizable.
No.
Yeah.
So, excuse me, the net cost in this is about 65,000, you said? So you said, I
Depending on our
The
negotiations with
cost, yeah,
NCT,
yeah.
the net cost total would be 90,000,
okay.
and then net to us would be 65.
Okay.
This kind of thing has come up maybe, what, 3 times in 5 years or something like that? This- To Angela's question
Sweeping out
about
funds,
the
yeah.
quantity
Yeah.
of, you know, how many of these things, they sporadically pop up, but I don't know, I think I've been on this committee 6 or 7 years now, and I don't think we've seen this 5 times, and usually for pretty small money.
Well, it provides a great opportunity, obviously, to.
you said that coax, oh, sorry. You said the coax was 25 years old?
It's back when we brought AT&T broadband in. That was the predecessor to, and there was something in the middle that was, so it went from AT&T to something to Comcast. So I'm thinking it was 1984 or 1986, so it's going back 30 years.
And does coax have a useful life to it? I mean, does it go away after a while?
Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised they're still
Yeah.
working at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive. That was a excellent investment, apparently, at the time.
And actually, that was provided by Comcast as part of their original license, so that wasn't a cost that the town had paid.
And if the full amount is not spent on the fiber optic loop, this stays in the fiber optic loop account until we transfer it out of there?
Yeah, I mean, this is the way she presented it. I guess I would, if I was going to stand up and defend this at town meeting, I'd probably, as we get closer to town meeting, we'll have a better idea of what our cost will be. We'll have a contract in place. I think I would just probably move the 65,000 or whatever that number is.
Yeah, it makes,
Because I don't want anybody saying, what are you going to do with that?
well, unless, excuse me, is it less encumbered in the fiber optic loop account once you move it out?
No, not, no.
No,
But it doesn't make much sense to
but I
create
would-
2 pots.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is now what happens if you're left with a little bit of money out of that project? Now you've got dead money in this little thing, so
And I
I
think
don't know,
that's
it
what she
almost
was
feels
trying to
better to
avoid.
move
Yeah.
the whole,
Yeah, I
mean,
agree.
I agree, it's
here-
gonna be a little odd explaining.
No.
The issue
Yeah.
is the
Well, we could
merits
move it
of
to
the
the Article
project.
37,
Find something else to spend the money on.
like a police station.
I mean, yeah, do it now.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's a great idea to get it all out of the account and put it around to someplace where it's live, but just find something more to do with it. And
Yes.
I've got a question. Do you think that's will that cover the infrastructure modifications to each building, or does that just bring the utility to the building? Because there'll be infrastructure, within each particular building that'll need to be upgraded as well. So is that number all inclusive of those modifications within each building?
Yep, my understanding, the $90,000 also includes the hardware to receive the fiber and
All right,
make
good,
any changes.
good. All right. So it's a nice clean, that from here to there
Yeah,
to there.
it's
Good.
kind of the theory we had with the cars a number of years ago. We're buying a car that all bells and whistles, so that
Right.
somebody can just sit in, jump in and.
You don't buy a car and then you gotta buy the tires later.
Well, buy the tires, buy the lights, buy the cage, buy the, why have 7 articles when you can have 1?
Yeah, I get it, okay. All
No,
right.
my understanding is $90,000 was the full soup to nuts.
Okay, all right.
All right, Jack, critical question. The 811 abatements, isn't that a contra revenue account? That's not an expense account we appropriate, is it? Like, it seems odd we're transferring it. Wouldn't it just be a shortfall in that line of your revenue? Just like every other lines probably has some variance in it.
If you look, it's a,
FY13, that's another odd aspect. FY13. Don't we normally hang on to those for a couple of years until we're really convinced there's a surplus or a deficit?
yeah, but this is a deficit, so we do hang, if it was a positive number,
Sorry.
we'd be hanging
Yes,
on to it.
Yeah.
It's a contra revenue,
Yeah.
so we're not required by state law to appropriate it. We
Right.
just, but we show it on this, as a contra revenue, and then on the tax rate recap, the recapitulation,
Yeah.
we reserve that money into a special revenue account. So that special revenue account, so next year, I'm saying we should put $125,000 aside. That money gets all used by people
Yep.
who come in and challenge their
Right.
abatements, also is used by the senior program when they come in and work off their
Yep.
tax bills.
Okay, no, I was just wondering, usually we're transferring among expense accounts, not revenue accounts.
It is a,
Yeah. Usually like accounts we've appropriated from. That was really
yeah,
my
and
question.
the alternative is we just leave it as a negative, and then we
It'll get cleared out in free
capture it
cash.
on the tax rate recap. But
Right.
we have to cover it out of the levy, so that's why we don't try to,
That's- I mean, we've spent more time on it. It was worth it $811, but I was just kind of curious.
Well, now that you saved that copier, yeah, we could really hone in on the details.
Yep.
All right.
$30 million is it we're talking about here?
Jack, this was really helpful to have this in advance. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great. Appreciate it.
I will pass that on to Julie. Julie's the one that put that in my hand.
Awesome, thanks.
So this was just for information at this point. There will be final and perhaps additional transfers the night of town meeting, but don't forget about this, because we don't want to talk about it again.
And is the intention to include something like this second page as part of the handout to the town?
Yeah, a little neatened up, but, yeah. I mean, we're gonna, so,
So what does that then tax recap refer to?
oh, so what, she probably meant for me to just have this, but,
Mine actually looks a lot better than everybody else's, because mine is
Oh,
another
yours has the
50,000 off of it.
oh, yeah, I handed you mine.
Yeah, that's, I think maybe you can just hold on to that second page.
Yeah.
Unless there was something you were trying to do specifically.
No, that's just trying to, that's her trying to close the snow and ice deficit.
Okay.
So what she's saying is we have a $455,000 deficit, we're transferring almost $307,000. So that leaves us with a deficit of $148. We're taking $16,000 from the snow revolving fund,
Yeah.
and it still leaves us a deficit of $132, which we'll have to close in the fall, either at the fall town meeting with a transfer, or we put it on the tax rate recap, but that requires us to cover it out of the tax levy. So that's really like putting it into the FY15
Right.
budget. So it's difficult to do, so.
Wait, but she has another option here.
Well, that's me. I'm not going to give her that credit. So our free cash right now, we started with $544,000 at the end of June, or whenever it was certified after that. We spent $314,000 in the fall.
How much did we spend, Jack?
314.
314, okay.
And 6. 314,006.
All right.
Left us with 230,058. We are transferring $50,000 to snow and ice, as she identified on this sheet. We are taking $130,000 now out of
14,
for the
15 budget?
FY15 budget, so
Yeah.
that leaves us a balance of $50,058. So that's why I was trying to actually probably increase the transfers another $50,000. so-
100 for snow.
Yeah, so it leaves us with a deficit of
You know, we're using
82,897.
Right, but so 180 minus another 130. we
Was
got
this our
50
worst
left.
snow year ever?
Okay.
It is. Yeah. By far.
Really, I feel like 4 or 5 years ago, we had a really bad,
Yeah, that-
more.
Yeah, this was
Compact.
Dig out
This
some
was a
more.
longer
Oh,
season.
okay.
It was that
multiple storms. And
No.
You had to treat with this, yeah.
Yeah, which also,
Need more treatment
Paul
on the
would know,
roads.
it's, yeah, more damage to the roads too. I mean, there was a couple weekends that just felt like the roads exploded with
Have you talked to
potholes.
Paul about
Yeah.
that?
I have talked to Paul, yes, I have.
Doesn't surprise me.
Paul's gonna hold back on his taxes so that until I get the roads. I told him that was a great idea.
Yeah, I already paid him.
Do you have a sense where you think FY14, in terms of generating free cash, will come in? Do you have a, it's too early, that's fine, but I was just, because you're down to 50, it's like, whoa, we're scraping the bottom here.
Just the amount we wanted to.
Now, granted, we have all the prison mitigation money, so
Yeah,
there's
we have
definitely
the-
some cash coming into the town. Well, we already have the cash, but there's some cash we can actually spend in the fall.
Julie was thinking it would probably be in the $300,000 to $500,000 range.
Right.
Having said that, we have the,
Yeah, some things.
we also have the 235 and the 238
Right,
of prison
right.
mitigation, $75,000 of FEMA, which will
Yep.
go, those will all go into free cash. So
Right, right.
Really, we should have
Close to a million.
500,000 right there.
Yeah.
But the prison mitigation money isn't really free cash
No,
because
it
that's
is.
only used for,
Oh, well,
It's
that's just
earmarked,
our
right?
own. Yeah, yeah.
So you can just
well,
apply it
I mean,
back to
that's,
the line item.
I keep getting different, hearing different, sometimes it's tradition that we use it only for capital, other times it's required by the state to use it for capital. The answers keep bouncing back and forth between those two answers.
Depends how much money.
It is supposed to be used for capital.
Supposed to be legally, meaning we are
Legally,
obligated.
Department of
to-
Revenue, I don't know if it's a law or Department of Revenue regulation, but Department of Revenue guidance from their legal department is that we spend it on capital. I imagine it's probably embedded to the budget somewhere in the Department of Corrections.
So it may be free cash in the sense that that's where it shows up, but it's not really free cash
Well-
because we're constrained in what we could use it for.
Would they say if you borrowed 500 and paid it back over, or borrowed 2 million and paid it back over 5 years using your, would they consider that?
We've done that. and they- and we got-
Using
we
your
got-
prison mitigation money for?
We got a wrist slap. We did.
Okay.
We used it as a
they would
source in the budget,
In a,
earmarking it towards capital.
ideally, it's
Debt service.
cash payments for capital.
Yeah.
That's what they would think of it, okay. All
I have a
right.
hard time with, because we did put it into the budget, earmarking it towards debt service, and that's when we got our wrist slapped by the auditor.
Huh.
So Jack, I think just to Dave's question about free cash expectation year over year, if it's around the 500 mark, is that sort of, what we talked about, building some cushion, is that like the target?
It's going to be $1 million. I don't
Like if you were, as you're building this, I mean,
I would phrase it a
if
little
that's
differently.
okay, yeah.
I would phrase it a little differently.
Okay, thank you.
If some of the contingencies that are built into the budget don't occur, we should generate 300 to 500
Thank you.
of free cash.
Thank you.
How's that?
Oh,
I appreciate
Conversely,
that. Yeah,
is that,
everything goes against us, we would spend our full budget.
correct.
So,
Yeah. I mean, we generally turn back about $200,000 from budgets at the end of the year, that money that's gone unspent. Last couple of years, fire's done well with that, police has done well with that, the elementary school has done that. King Philip keeps theirs for their excess and deficiency, so they have their own free cash, if you will.
Right.
Finance has done well.
And I guess I only asked so
revenue in
that.
excess of your projections.
Yeah, hopefully in excess.
I only asked, I'm sorry,
Sorry,
I
go
only
ahead.
asked because I think just for me, in terms of being able to interpret the level of free cash at the end of the year, trying to interpret how we performed based on the contingencies that were, or the unexpected things that did or did not occur. That's why I'm asking for, which I got my answer.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Yeah.
So the school budget comes in, the KP school budget comes in, and they start at 13, you get them down to 4, it's not all that transparent, and then any money that they don't spend, they keep?
Correct. Or conversely,
So that is a
Something
little bit,
comes up
that's
that-
even more disturbing, that it's not quite so transparent.
oh, I'm not sure what we mean by not transparent.
Well, Angela, you were saying that it doesn't really show where, they're keeping little pockets here and there and for contingencies, but when those contingencies do not happen, it doesn't go back to the towns?
No,
They are in effect another town.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, the KP Regional School is its own town,
Right.
and they have their own budget.
But it's
We merely
transparent
give
in
them
the
money,
sense.
But they manage their own
Yeah.
budget, and they have their own version of free cash they call the
Right,
excess and deficiency.
excess and deficiency.
But it's
So-
just like they're a town.
Yeah. So if you wanted to know, like, how much are they carrying, I mean, it's a known number what their excess and deficiency is.
Certified.
If you- Yeah, it's certified
Yeah,
similar
just
to
like
ours.
ours, okay.
Yeah.
And in
yeah.
fact, their budget is about
The
30
same as
million bucks, and their E&D is about $500,000
Right.
typically. So they're very similar to the town of Norfolk in their budgets and the size of reserve they try to carry. And the numbers are all out there in their budget.
Okay.
There's nothing hidden about it.
The expectation then is that the 133,000 remaining deficit will be funded in the fall town meeting once we certify the 2014 free cash, and the expectation is that the free cash will be sufficient to do so?
Yes, although I think, depending on how the rest of the year plays out,
Yeah.
no other surprises, and no other changes to the budget, because it wouldn't be the first time that I come here and then we do something different at town meeting. I would take that remaining $50,000 of free cash and apply it into the transfers to fund, to lower the deficit down to 82,000. We'd carry that 82,000 to the fall. So as of today, if we do everything that I've outlined for you, I've still got $50,000 in free cash.
Right.
I'm saying if nothing else changes between now and town meeting, I'd take that $50,000 and change the transfers, so we're going to lower that deficit down to 82,000.
Sorry, I understand, in the upcoming fall, well, I realize we might not have a fall town
Special,
meeting.
we
you mean
will.
special town meeting.
In the special town meeting
We
that we
should
might
stop calling
schedule,
it
like we
special.
have every year in the past, is it your expectation that there'll be sufficient free cash to cover the?
Yes.
And it will be certified by that time?
It better be. Yes, it will.
So when we don't expect to add it to the cash rolls, we're pretty comfortable that, tax rolls, we expect that the free cash will be certified to a level sufficient to address the.
I do. And if it, for some reason it's not, the alternatives would be we make a budget reduction somewhere,
Right.
or we take money from another source such as stabilization.
Right.
Those would be the options.
Okay, good, thank you.
I mean, the certification last year was one day before the town meeting, as I recall, right, or 2 days before? It was a very, very small difference, a small window between the certification and free cash amount. There was a date in the materials we got, and I thought it was like 48 hours before or something like that. So,
Julie's been she's been doing it now for about 4 years. I thought the last couple of years she's been mid-September or so.
well, it wasn't an issue of her. I thought it was the state's certification that you're talking about, isn't it?
It could be. My memory's not as great as it used to be.
I thought this was some kind of state certification that we were getting.
There's two certifications, and I'm not, and that's probably the one you're talking about. The other one would be certifying our assessed values, which kind of tells us what our new growth is going to be. That comes very late, November into December. That's state would like state. It's funny that the state wants us to have town meetings, special town meetings, fall town meetings earlier because they're trying to spread out their certification of tax rates, which all happen in December. But we're generally waiting for them to certify our free cash and our value, so it's
We could have it in May.
a catch-22. What's
We could
that?
have the meeting in May.
Yeah.
Well, this is very helpful. Again, thank you, Jack.
Well,
That's great.
Meeting?
Are there other things we want to spend money on?
We have to approve the water.
We got you down for the two capital items, Jack, yes?
89.
Yeah, I don't think that,
Cash, capital debt.
I don't think I'm making any changes other than eliminating a couple things.
Handout or no?
Yeah, I'll give you a fresh one if you want.
Or if we could have one.
Oh, from
Is
last
it in
time.
with something we already, I have a whole stack of papers there, I just don't know.
I've carefully filed everything on the kitchen table, so if you have another one.
Yeah.
I know.
It's amazing how much stuff the kitchen table can hold. You're doing this one.
Oh, then I better,
Get that handout.
better refer to my copious notes on the topic.
Okay, so
Mine's in it, Marion's.
I think Article 8 will handle the water capital,
Oh, this was the sprinkler.
the 2 tank mixers. So we've eliminated the truck and we've eliminated the copier,
Eliminated the truck? Wasn't that
the need for the truck.
bucket of rust that, or,
No.
this-
No,
this
it's
is the water
truck.
department.
Yeah, it's the
one you said was
$100,000.
expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. We just haven't vetted that enough internally yet to present that to you, so we'll,
What do we, oh, 2.
we'll sharpen our pencils for the fall on that one. So for Article 8, this would be the water, which is it's got the blue highlight on it,
Yep.
and it's the 2 tank mixers.
Wait, 8 is the
Is capital
Capital.
cash.
capital cash.
And I think I wrote 9, but I think.
8, 6? 6
Sorry,
maybe?
what?
So 150,000.
Water enterprise. Right, you're saying water enterprise operating budget?
No, that's
No.
Article 8 is.
Okay.
But it's a good question. Why are we doing, and we must have done this in the past, but we've funded water department capital. This is out of retained earnings.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the
This is a
cash.
non-debt.
Sorry, this is it's not the town's cash. It is retained earnings
Of the
from
water department,
water
of the water
department.
fund.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
And-
we've had articles relating to like well expenses and things like that in the past.
Yep, no, thank you. It's that's clear.
Yeah, so probably I'll do it a different way next year, just to confuse you, but we'll keep going.
These 2 handouts are for Article 8? I'm sorry.
No, so the
Just-
one with the
just
blue,
the little
one with
blue.
blue,
Just the water thing.
just
threw
that
me
one
off.
line
Okay.
is about Article 8,
Okay.
even though I wrote 9 on there.
Okay.
Ignore that. So we've got 2 tank mixers, they're about $75,000 each. I suspect that number will come down, but we will have, we're going out to bid on those now. They actually probably will be off a state bid list and not have to go out to bid, but, and we're looking at 2 mixers that are non-mechanical, so but it would require us to drain the tank one at a time, put in equipment so that it basically just creates like a spigot. You got water going in at different levels and creates a funnel effect, and it's really just stirring your water based on pressure coming in from the pumps. That is the thinking of the current day. So it's under cash because we're spending that from retained earnings. We don't have to borrow.
So is the...
Bob McGee
was
would be
this-
happy to speak to that at town meeting if you want. Otherwise, we'll let you.
So is it something that we're replacing, or is it something that's wholly new that we just identified a need for?
Fully new. It's, right now, we just have the water, I know in at least one of the tanks, we have the water coming into the bottom, and the outflow is not too far from it. You know, there are people that, you know, look at the tanks and understand the mechanics of what's going on in there, and the feeling is, and it's probably not very scientific, is the water's probably going in, going out. When the pumps are on, it's taking a short circuit. So we just think this is an improvement to keep the water as fresh as possible. So it's not a replacement, it's an improvement to the tank.
Okay.
Are we guaranteeing you'll taste the difference?
Yes, we are.
If you have town water.
And it's two because there are two wells in town, one's going in each one?
Two tanks. There are two wells, but these are in the tanks. There are two tanks. There's one right here at Weber, right behind Town Hall. And then there's another one on Spruce Road, which, if you drive up behind Provo's Liquor, you'd see it off in the distance there. But
Okay.
most people probably have never seen it before.
Oh, the tank, right, I was thinking, oh, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Is this a sufficient description?
I think Bob will do a 2-minute presentation on it and put some slides up and,
But do we have to, in the motion, do we have to be more, I mean, tank mixers could be, I guess it could be a lot of things, but
Very
I thought
generic,
we had to have a degree of specificity in these capital items.
You engineer, I knew you'd jump into this. You're going to try to figure out how this thing that Jack is talking about works, like some sort of mechanical device. So I'm thinking Arlie is going to jump in and do it. But
Well, as an economist, I'd
it's kind of-
I'd like to have something, I just thought that.
You're allowed
in the
two
capital-
comments, by the way. in
Yeah.
30
Mixer didn't do it
seconds.
for you, Alan?
It
Water
sounds
tank
pretty
mixer.
simplistic to me. It sounds like common sense to me. You've got tanks of water.
And
Well, I
You want to
understand.
mix the water.
No,
so
but
that
I-
it stays fresh.
Still.
But you have one ingredient.
With you on your point, because, I mean, we're going to have 12 people up there asking the question, and I think you can save those 12 from getting up, some of
Right.
them 3 to 4 times, by just giving a little bit more of a detailed explanation to this.
Actually, there would be a better description. Tank stirrer is really what it is.
Water
'Cause
tank
There's nothing to
stirrer.
mix, to
Yeah,
your
a
point,
tank,
Angela.
Right.
Hopefully, there's only one ingredient in our
Water
water tank.
circulator.
Well, yeah.
Circulator. Yeah.
Thorough is so
The
much
analogy
harder.
is a machine for
Try
water.
to say that.
Okay, sorry, guys, I really let you get off course.
Reel it back in.
Yeah.
But I guess in Article 8, it says out of the capital budget,
Tank
cash,
circulator
but this
would
is
sound very
retained
sophisticated.
earnings, so is that maybe throwing me
It's
off?
just
too?
that we say cash because it's not debt. So
Okay.
it's just the
Income
And-
from.
and-
checking account is called retained earnings versus free cash.
And the motion will specify that, right?
Correct.
So in your motion, you will have language that says specifically where this money is coming from and how much and all that
Okay.
good stuff. So it
Okay.
won't have that generic character to it.
Okay,
And then there's the explanation that you're writing.
right. Just kind of my
So you just.
selfish
you know,
focus of the moment. So will I be giving something more descriptive to your point, or will I be the one articulating where?
Well, I think, isn't Bob going to do
Is
this?
Yeah.
Bob going to produce
the
something in
actual-
addition to this before I
Slide.
draw?
No, the motion, someone's going to write a
Right.
motion, right?
Yeah.
That's what I
The
think.
motion is just going to be
Yeah.
dirt simple to
$150,000
appropriate the money from the water reserves for these two items with however many words we want to put in the name of them. But the discussion about them is where I think your issue will come up, Arlie, as to what are they and what are they for and so forth. But I don't know that the motion needs to be particularly.
I didn't mean to make any more complex than necessary. I believe there have been similarly worded motions in past warrants,
Okay.
and perhaps we could dig one up as a point of reference.
Yeah.
That would help to, because you're going to write this motion as
Yes,
well as the
yeah.
idea? Okay, so.
No, I'm doing the motion.
No, but I'm writing the, not the motion, but the, yeah.
That was your
That's
job
the-
too,
that's
Arlie.
the-
I delegated all that.
motion,
By the
sorry.
end, I delegated
Yes.
all that. But, okay, great. Don't let me, sorry.
Yeah, be quiet before you get some assigned.
I didn't hear you talk, I thought that was my job.
Okay,
So I've been doing the motions and leaving the explanations to everybody else, but,
maybe you want to do the explanations, too.
or maybe you want to do the motion.
Just throw that.
Previous
Everybody do their own motion.
chairman threw out both pieces. We just didn't tell you.
Don't ruin a good thing.
All right.
Well, Anyway, since
All
the
right.
motions are generally, I move to approve as printed in the warrant, it's not that onerous a task.
No.
All right. But anyway, back to the point, if we had a point.
So, I move to recommend approval of Article 8 to spend $150,000 on tank stirrers.
Second.
Yeah.
Article 8 has been moved and seconded. Do we have further, do we have further discussion?
Nope.
Any further, no? No, hearing none. All in favor of approving Article 8? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Now we can get the jokes about the
Now
martini.
these-
I was going to say we should put olive in the top.
They even look like it.
A little stir at the top.
Okay.
Okay, I believe Article 9
I
is
wasn't the only
unchanged from last week.
All right.
That is the one on the separate page with the
Yes.
salmon-like
Article
and greenish-like colors. We're buying a backhoe, dump truck, 2 police cars, sprinkler system for each all of day, 3 tasers, and DPW exhaust system for the garage. Total of $481,800, which we are recommending that we borrow those funds.
Do we need to specify the period?
No.
For the sprinkler system, I thought we spent money on a fire suppression at the HOD. Wasn't that
Fire alarm, wasn't
in
it?
our alarm,
Alarm system.
Alarm system.
fire alarm system? Okay.
This is in the, left section with the art room at the addition.
Oh, it's just a section in the school
Yeah.
that needs it?
Is it a replacement or a complete new installation?
I believe it's a replacement. I think
That's
it
a
must be a-
replacement, okay.
So with the exception of 8, is it all replacement, everything on the list? Or I guess
No,
8
not-
maybe as well?
9 is new, there's no exhaust system at all other than opening the door. Yeah, it doesn't
So
make-
is that to meet like a OSHA requirement, or is it just best practice, or is it?
Protecting your employees, I think.
Protecting employees.
I'm just
yeah.
wondering why I didn't have one there. I mean, just up until this time, it didn't.
It's become more of a problem because we added we put a couple of people up in an office up on the second floor, so it's certainly become, highlighted that issue.
Carbon
Did they ever come
monoxide.
down?
Well, it's Bob,
There's a-
and,
It's got a little red
Yeah.
when they come down.
So 8 and 9 are new, but the rest is all replacement.
Yes.
correct.
Do we have any cash capital spending on the part of the town?
No,
No,
no.
because we don't have any cash.
Yeah.
Because the prison mitigation money, according to DOR, is not available for us. So unless we want to divert some free cash,
Right.
if I'm going to read between your lines, one thing we could do is eliminate the tasers off of that and then do a reserve fund transfer and just fund the $3,900 into the police budget.
If that was on his mind, that's a hell of a read.
$3,900.
else?
I did, but that's a good idea,
Where'd you think
because
I
it
was
is a
going?
small item.
But it's
Yeah, it is.
1% of the,
Yeah,
it's 1% of the number. Why
I
mess
don't think
with
it's
it?
worth the discussion at town meeting.
Yeah.
I'd rather-
Yeah, I don't-
I'd rather fund it out of our reserve.
I agree.
I would too. I'd rather not borrow for $3,900.
Right.
Right. I'm surprised.
The
you
rest
could
of
even
these
get
are
the-
relatively long-term investments.
We kind of we had a capital list and then we prioritized it, kind of thinking we were going to have some cash funds, and that's why I kind of just stuck on there.
Well, in the spirit of Article 7, right, which you did find place for in the budget, I mean, putting this.
Right.
Are
Yep.
these
I- I would-
unanticipated?
I would think that, sorry?
Are these if it's coming out of our money, it's got to be unanticipated. No.
Spend it on
This comes to me as a complete surprise.
Well, the purpose of the reserve is, it says somewhere that they're unanticipated.
I'm comfortable with the surprise element of the tasers. I would be
I'm not,
comfortable.
I don't really care, but that is out there somewhere.
Can I ask a question about if we're replacing is there any residual value from the vehicles that we're replacing? So the backhoe and the dump truck, are we,
It wasn't
Talked a little
much.
bit about
will
that,
we
yeah.
sell those, or will we, oh, we did, I'm sorry.
Some were just metal. You bring them to the
like
junkyard and
that, too.
get metal scrap, that's all the value they'd have. Some had.
Like $8,000, I think is
Yeah,
what they
minimal
talked
value.
about.
Yeah, you missed
So
the
what is,
pictures.
so what is the plan then?
Did you see the
Are
pictures?
they selling them, or are they?
Yeah, there's the pictures right there. They're some pretty old pieces of equipment,
Won't
so.
make it.
So does that mean there's
Anything we
no val-
gain in value is
They're
would
not.
be a bonus,
He
but
said
there's
they
no.
basically could just get scrap metal
Yeah.
price for them. what I'm-
exception of
like
that big,
1981 or 82, something
heavy
like
piece
that.
of
Really? The
equipment, that
backhoe
might have
thing?
$8,000 worth of value. you
For the
know, to
backhoe?
somebody. No, that's that bigger unit, right? It looks
Yeah.
like it might have some,
It's not small.
Yeah,
I mean,
For the steel.
Paul,
Yeah, maybe for the steel
Paul
too, yeah.
Paul Vito will go through a process of, contacting his vendors and auction houses and stuff like that, and he'll try and get a feel for what he thinks he could sell it for. And the process he would have to go through is putting it on our website and making it available and have people come in and basically make a proposal to purchase it.
The selectmen have to declare it a surplus, right?
Yep, the selectman declared it surplus, and if he thinks that money, then he'll compare that whatever number he gets from that exercise, and he'll figure out how much he would get for just scrapping it for scrap metal, and whatever's more, that's the method we'll use. Or he could in the case of the dump truck, well, I guess in either case, he could trade him in too, and that would just reduce the purchase price of the vehicle. So
Yeah.
he's got those three options available to us.
Okay, so if he, this for my own edification, and so if he did, I mean, I get if it would reduce the purchase price on trade-in, this number would effectively go down.
Yep.
Or if he were to sell it, what then would happen to those proceeds? Would they go back into the,
General fund,
General
yeah,
fund.
he can't
Okay.
spend them, whether he sells it or he scraps it, that goes miscellaneous revenue into the general fund.
okay. So hopefully pick up something for it. I mean,
Yeah.
especially the backhoe's a big piece of equipment. Something's better than nothing.
Yeah, and,
His guess was $6,000 to $8,000 or something like that. He said was it the backhoe or the truck that was like 1980?
The truck, I don't think.
truck is
yeah, the
definitely
truck
80s.
is,
Just junk steel, I think that was.
it's all used for
rust.
salt, and so
Okay.
that's eaten away.
Thank
pretty
you.
much.
Sorry, I wasn't here at the last meeting.
That's fine.
We've got 39,000 left in our reserve fund.
We've only spent
42,
80,
42, that's what,
right?
42.
Yeah, 42, I think is right.
Well, why don't we take the exhaust system then, too? I mean, why are we buying, this is small
We have
change,
to
right?
pay for our mailing.
Well, I don't know if everything's going out first class, even then, it might stretch, but I mean, we've got.
We're hiring
Great.
personal
A little
delivery
bit.
people this year.
I think it's a good question.
Unless there's other, do you anticipate we're going to get additional requests?
The only one I think you'll get is about a $15,000 request. And that's a somewhat self-serving request. The selectmen have redone my contract, and it's not an increase to me, but they're moving some, I had some deferred compensation, and they moved it into my base pay. And the timing of deferred compensation it was always paid in a year lag. I'm asking them to move that into the current year. So we have two options, either increase next year's town administrator budget and continue to pay this year's deferred comp next year, or do a budget transfer at the end of this year and pay me my deferred comp in June that I would be owed for 2014.
So your expectation is then that any additional transfers would still leave money available to fund both the exhaust system and the tasers?
Yeah, and we have money in the facilities budget, so I think if that's kind of one, unless we run into some public safety crisis, I don't expect any.
Harley, you're suggesting 16 plus the 15 that Jack mentioned is 31. That will leave 11 for your purpose, Jack.
No, the 15 is for.
Jack said it's
Jack
15
Jack
for
is
that.
15
15.
part of that.
Oh, okay, I
Well,
thought.
yeah, I don't,
I'm sorry.
I'm not, we
I
could
thought
wait.
you
So
put
15,
something
9.
on top of the 15. Okay.
So 39.
All right, so yeah, so that leaves us with
Right.
11 grand.
Right.
Right.
Might as well reduce the amount we're borrowing. It saves us money and
Yeah.
Sure.
the money's, otherwise it just hangs around in an account for 6 months and we spend it on the snow and ice deficiency, I guess, in the fall, more or less. So these are also small numbers, so I would have thought they might fit more naturally in that style of budget.
So we can entertain a motion for 15,900 from the reserve fund now, and I can go out and buy those things tomorrow. That'd be great.
We don't need a motion for that, do we? I thought we just needed to sign some paperwork.
But this motion has to be for an amount.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do,
That we could
Taking out.
discuss. though.
Or
We would
81.8
probably- we
minus
would-
the
When you bring the
15.9.
paperwork, we'll sign it.
So it'd be 465.9.
I saw you take your shoes off to count.
okay, so what was the number? I'm sorry, 465,900?
Yeah.
Right.
I move to recommend approval of a capital budget for one backhoe, one 33,000-pound dump truck, and 2 police cars, and an 8 olive day sprinkler system for a total spending of $465,900.
Second.
Second.
Yeah. A lot of second.
Okay, moved and seconded that we approve expenditures of that amount. Your motion didn't specify debt, but I don't think that's necessary, right? Because that's the nature of the article itself. And so, any discussion?
I'm sorry, now I have a question. This 35,000 from previous article, is that relevant for us anymore?
No.
Okay.
The motion will transfer money from that other article as part of the motion.
Okay, so the
cost is
total amount
110,
is
sorry.
110.
Yes,
So the net
yes.
amount is, so the 75 is the remaining amount after the $35,000 transfer. And the previous article refers to,
This one's similar to the fiber optic issue.
The
effectively,
HOD
right?
playground
Yeah, we borrowed,
monies?
okay, so it's not that it refers to Article 9.
No,
It
no, no.
refers
No.
to
of previous years.
previous year's article.
Yes, similar to the fiber
Yeah.
optic.
Okay. I think that's clear. Okay.
Okay, further discussion?
Well,
What is that one, Jack? What do we?
It was the playground,
borrowed?
leftover funds from the HOD playground?
Yeah,
I remember
thought
the
this was
playground
Article
funding.
9 that we're talking about right now, right?
But this is, Arlie's referring to this 35,000.
Maybe it's
Right, but this is
inside
Article
something
9.
else. In your debt schedule, I was just looking at the debt.
Right.
schedule.
This is the debt, yes, this part we're
Right.
talking about, the 465,900 is debt funding.
Yeah.
Yes,
now.
yes, yes.
And there's the question
I'm not sure it was
on the
debt
table
funding.
now, it has to do
We may
with
have
the,
funded
Previous
that.
article.
How
Yes.
does that,
It's a capital
Which
article.
is
I'm
not
not sure,
being-
I'm not sure the source was debt.
no,
Okay.
last year, or
Okay, it's
last
just
year's?
left over in a capital article.
Yeah.
Ah, sorry, okay.
So Jack, when will, that additional request that you just talked about, when will we see that? Is that part of what, or that's, we'll see that later, the request for that?
If, I was kind of waiting to see how the whole budget fell through and all that stuff and was bringing that to the end. So I'll bring that to your next meeting, which may
All right.
Yeah,
not
we
be
might as
town
well
meeting.
Yeah.
do that
I mean,
now.
especially because the exhaust, I mean.
Yeah.
People getting woozy up at the top. We should
Oh, you
probably-
mean that one? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, I was talking about Jack's
No,
15.
yeah.
We might as
Yeah,
well
get that
do
one
that
off.
now.
Yeah, get that one.
Yeah.
Get it voted.
do we need a motion to spend the 16.9?
From our reserve fund?
Yeah. I don't think we do.
15.
15,
I mean, you could
59.
take a
sorry,
motion to
sorry.
authorize
Yeah,
Pat to sign the paperwork if you wanted to.
okay.
If you wanted
Make a
get it
motion to
done.
Pat to sign the
We should have a
paperwork for
request in writing.
15.9.
I second
Yeah,
it.
once,
Specifying the reason
yeah.
before we approve any transfer from our funds. So, if was your question, can we deal with that tonight?
That was my question.
Question?
Yeah, and if so, I'd be,
Just made a
Prepared.
motion to,
Yeah.
for
No, I
for
think
Pat
we
to be
should-
able
I think we should
to
have
sign
the
that.
the paperwork before
documentation
we have that, okay.
Before we do that.
Okay.
I rescind my second.
Well,
But for Article 9, we have a moved and
I didn't
seconded.
get a second on the
Yes.
motion
Yeah.
anyway, so.
Right, we have a motion and a second,
Based,
which does
Article
not relate
9.
to transferring our funds.
Right.
Yes.
So, any further discussion relevant to the article for which there's a motion in play?
I guess in the motion, I just want to make sure in the motion at town meeting, it will be,
500.
the 110,000,
Yeah.
75,000 will be borrowed and 35,000 will be transferred from that other capital article. So actually, the grossed up number will be,
Will be plus the 35.
500,000.
Then we need to approve, then we need to add the,
Yes.
Yeah.
I
The
think we should.
35,000.
500,900.
Article 9 is specifically debt-funded capital. That other 35,000 is
no, it's
well,
capital budget, debt.
raise and appropriate or
Any-
transfer from any available
yeah,
source.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think,
I think it's fine.
Okay.
We've done it all different
Do 'em all in
ways.
One if we wanted.
Yeah, we've had one capital article with
Right.
that wording,
Right.
but we've had 3 or 4 different motions.
We've always made a point of separating debt, at least in my
Yeah.
time on this, it's always been a point made of separating the two.
You could do the transfer in the transfer article if you want to just
I was
have the
wondering.
75,000 as part of this motion if you.
Where would you transfer it to?
To a new line item, a new capital project. I don't really care.
But we still need to approve the expenditure of the higher amount, is that right?
I'll amend my motion to gross it up to $500,900.
Second.
And that will then consolidate the borrowing and the spending, the transfer.
Capital transfer.
35 plus the 469 is 504, right?
No, it's 465, 900.
Plus
Plus-
35.
Oh, 465, 900, okay,
35.
sorry. Yep, yep.
So then we don't need to reference the transfer within
That's
this?
500, comma, 900.
No, because it'd be part of the article,
Yes.
borrow or transfer.
Okay,
So
so
without-
without making that differentiation of that 35,000?
Yeah, so
Okay.
the motion will say to spend 509, to spend 509,000, which will be sourced from.
Right.
465,900 of debt, and to further transfer $35,000 from another article. But Pat will
What-
put that all together for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Pat.
500, yes,
Yes, 500, comma 900.
Sorry.
It's 500, comma, 900, 500,900, not 509,000,
Right.
but 500,000.
$900.
Right.
Right.
Ours.
No, this is not the finance committee.
Okay. All right, so that's, the motion will be in that amount.
Got
Huh?
it.
Yep, and with the two sources of funds as Jack just described.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Okay, I think we got the,
Well, we got the water budget to approve.
we didn't vote the water budget?
No.
I thought we voted.
Oh, did you vote the roads?
Yeah,
We didn't vote the roads.
voted the water.
Sure we did.
No, we did do the roads.
We did Article
roads.
8, which is the water, yes, we did. And we just voted 9, which is the one we just did there, and now we got to do 10, which is the
No, we
road.
have to do, no, we already did. We did 10 last
Talking
week.
about the,
We did do 10? Yeah, that's right, we did.
Yeah.
Did the roads
You
without
abstained.
me?
Rick, remember you abstained?
right.
I did.
Already
abstain,
passed.
That's right.
Yes.
I already forgot.
That's why, yeah.
You guys are good.
Who's doing the roads?
Who is doing the roads?
APP.
Yeah, that's APP.
Who's APP?
It's not AGS, I can tell you that much.
Art, no, it's not art. Fronzak.
My list is buried here somewhere. It's been assigned, though.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have any, I don't think, any articles.
What I started out with slowly but surely gets buried
It's everything.
as the evening
Oh,
All right, I guess.
progresses.
All right.
There is that nice
Water
little
budget.
Oh, it says approved 319.
sorry.
list that we started out with.
Oh, well, here's the,
Like
Is it
there.
me? Because I have the next one.
no, we need to do the, we need to approve the water budget.
I'm
That's
11.
what we need to do.
Okay. I don't. Perhaps it will be in some minutes somewhere.
Which one?
The water
Who's
budget.
doing that?
I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, did we sign?
I thought
actually
we
don't-
had-
I thought it might be
I had some,
approved,
but-
but not assigned.
Thought they
is
were-
my
Right,
Yeah.
impression.
it's just approved, yeah.
Which article are we talking about?
10.
Article
10.
10.
Article 10. Oh, I thought that was, I thought Angela had 7, 8, 9, and 10, no?
Sure, Angela will take 10.
I thought you had all 4 of those. Sure.
I'll
Does
refer
that-
to my.
Your
copious notes.
APP
Does
then?
that jive with your recollection, or
Yes,
am I making
yes.
that up?
Right on.
Okay.
So with those, the approach that has been successful for me anyway, in the last couple of years is, you know, me or Bob or the selectmen are all ready to jump up and answer questions. But if you guys just make the brief presentation, people have gone with it. So we probably won't make a presentation unless there starts being questions.
Yeah, sounds good. What are the big presentations tonight? Are there any big sizable presentations?
potentially the
Oh, yeah.
fund.
Conservation Committee, I mean, community
Jane and
preservation usually does something.
I imagine
I
there'll
don't
be
know if there is
something
one
about Jane and
scheduled,
Paul's.
but-
Yeah, Jane and Paul's, yeah.
Stretch code.
There's the
Stretch code, well,
Yeah, Jane and Paul's will be a big one.
petitioner on the,
Petition articles would be a lot of
Unfortunately, I won't
discussion.
be
but-
Yeah.
there. I'm writing it, but I'm
Oh, that's right, that was our first
I won't be
meeting.
there the
So
second
what,
night. I'll be there
should we
first
be
Not
looking
quite.
at a piece of paper for a water
expecting
budget?
to go to
That's what I was
that
trying to find.
town meeting.
water budget,
You,
with
I,
the budget?
I started
don't
this
think
meeting
we
when you
would.
guys were all set with the water budget, so.
Totally gone.
Did Bob, did we,
Bob went over.
Bob went over, did we vote on it?
I recall the
Do we
high degree of
minutes?
enthusiasm for whatever he said, but I don't.
I thought it was level funded, or if not,
Think-
it was very close
Yeah,
to
no,
it.
it was-
Must have voted on it then.
Just trying to find.
We're all,
But you get,
You're sure we didn't vote it,
It
huh?
says
Maybe
Pat,
there's
but
Yeah.
it also says.
Water budget.
water budget
Which is what?
discussion.
oh, no, that's
I
a great
will-
point. That's a great,
Six.
Do we have meeting minutes?
that's a great
from
point.
Monday?
And that's a more, I'm learning more about.
I can't even find a piece of paper that got handed out to start the night.
Well, perhaps we
They're all appro- they are, they're saying they're all approved.
And we could resolve our,
I mean, we can
Oh.
always approve it again, right?
yeah, I just,
Oh, no,
I mean,
definitely-
it's
no, we
getting,
definitely didn't approve it. No.
No, we didn't. I don't have any.
I don't have.
well, maybe we ought to
They have
take
Bob's.
the building purchase because we have Jack here. It sounds like he's not going to be talking to the water budget.
Can, I just have to go find the water budget.
Sounds like a
So whatever people want to do.
I win $5 if I'm here for another 4 minutes, just for the record, so.
As a bet, how long?
Sue Jacobson owes me $5.
Okay, I found this on water.
There we go. That was it. That was it.
Been away.
We did,
A budget of 1 million, last year was 1,543,000, this year 1,575,000, an increase of $32,000. That 32 was 13 in salaries, 15 in expenses, and 4,500 in debt service. This is the, anybody wants to see this, these are the numbers. The bottom
reviewed
three
it with them
lines
already,
there.
though.
Right.
Yeah, we were
when
just
Bob
waiting
was
for a
here.
final number, is that it?
I
that
recommend
was it.
approval of $3 million, $499,600, oh no, total water? Total DPW, sorry, I wanted to approve the total DPW, $1,575,805.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve the water budget in the amount that Farley read off.
$1,575,805.
I'll take your word for it. Sorry. Any discussion?
No, I mean, it was a few weeks ago, but when Bob was here, he went, he basically said it's the same group, some small increases for expenses, and that was
No
it.
change in the water
Right,
rates.
no change in water rates.
And he discussed the level of reserve and the upcoming expenditures and so forth, so yes. It's all coming back to me now. Do we have a motion? We have a second, I believe, do we? Yes?
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the water budget? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. What else do we have?
Building.
37.
37. Is 37 the only one left? I've lost my,
Right, we'll do that one.
I lost my list that we started out with.
I assume we have no additional information on accepted public ways, so we'll.
The list we had at the beginning said hold next to
did.
that.
I have it right here, Jeff.
I can't find that. Whatever our handout was for the night. Oh, I know what I'm talking about, the email we got. This was the email.
Is there a number on that yet?
32.
The latest, the
There isn't.
latest warrant with what's outstanding, yeah, water was on this list, that's right.
okay.
Our outstanding list, according to Mary and Susan, and I believe them more than I believe me. 5, the budget we did, 6, water we did, capital we did, except public waste. This says hold.
It's on hold because the public hearing hasn't happened yet by the planning board. They have done a public hearing.
All right. But we typically vote.
After that.
We typically vote because there is no public hearing, so we have to vote anyway. Well, we don't have to, we could wait until the night of town meeting, but we usually don't, is my recollection.
I recall waiting till we got something written about accepting the public ways.
Yeah, they've got to present a written recommendation at town meeting, so I think that's usually what you wait for, in case they pull it back, you don't look like you're.
It's been, I seem to recall that we have approved and made a motion to the effect, and then found out later that it's been
Withdrawn by the
withdrawn.
planning board or something.
And we still go through the motions of making the motion, because that's what we voted, but I guess it doesn't really matter either way. This be quick enough to do this the night of town meeting if we want to.
I think if the only thing we have left is the transfers and this, I say we just do it before the town meeting and
Okay,
Yeah.
just write it.
I agree.
In the warrant, we'll make our recommendation at town meeting.
sounds good to me. Anybody have any objection to that? Then that's what we'll do.
Yeah, it's just one article.
Yeah.
Sorry, no, it's just one article.
The building purchase.
We don't have a number yet, right?
37.
Oh,
No, but as far as the amount.
You know,
37.
I wonder, if, on 32, I think one reason we had a question about it is that 32, in contrast to some other acceptances, has something about borrowing, transferring from available funds, a sum of money for such acquisition. And I thought, as I recall, there was a question about how much money we're talking about.
Oh, that's right. Is that wording
Yes.
still there? Because that's kind of unusual in these.
Yes.
In an acceptance, I don't recall it.
I think we, I thought we usually, don't we usually have that language in there? Because in case we need to take it by eminent domain or some reason and there ends up being a payout, we have that number there. We've never actually, in the motion, we've never had a dollar amount there.
Okay, that was the question. So it is not anticipated that there be any spending?
It would be the first time if it happens, yeah.
Okay, then,
Because this is a subdivision, it's the developer's responsibility to complete it and turn it over to us.
you know, I think it might have caught my eye perhaps because we didn't see the language in 33.
Right. Right, so that was our question was, is there something unique about the roadway in 32? But you're not aware of anything, Jack, unusual about?
Would it be because the extension of Toils End Road was actually there, where Essex Street was actually created? Because Toils End was a cart path that's always existed as a way, but Essex was created.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
No, I
would be
think
the
you're-
difference.
I mean, I think usually when they talk about parcel A and parcel B, it's not the actual roadway itself. It's kind of open space surrounding the road. I can't say I've looked at this map, so I don't know in this case, but I don't think, like you look at the first one, it's talking about stations, et cetera. It's the roadway and the infrastructure and everything else. So I think Article 33, they're literally just turning over open space to us. It's my
Layman's interpretation?
layman's interpretation, yeah.
So you kind of think that everything after that last semicolon, or after thereto on the third to last line there's no money associated with it? There's no,
Correct.
because I do think we accepted, we voted to recommend approval of 33 because it lacked that language. So apropos your point, Pat, if in fact 30, we could recommend approval of 32, striking the last three sentences or something like that, I imagine, because I don't think the planning board is going to come back on the money. It's going to be really, however the motion is written, that strikes or not the language. If there's no, right?
Yeah, I don't think you wouldn't strike the language out of the article, but you might move it with the contingency that you're not going to appropriate any funds or something to that effect, if that's what you want to do, which makes sense to me. I mean,
That was my specific concern, I think, about the language of this as it was written. So if the motion then had the notation that there was no spending anticipated, or no, this did not approve any spending, then if everyone else is comfortable with that, we could go ahead if you wanted.
I'm trying to see if I can find a street acceptance from last spring. Well, right? Or is this an early version of this one? No, this is last spring. Yeah, here's a street acceptance, and it's got "and further to raise, appropriate, borrow, etc." So the language wasn't, has been there before. I didn't remember it, but then. Okay.
All right, I move to approve Article 32.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we approve Article 32, and that is as written, so.
And the understanding, though, is that the
That
motion
there's-
will have language that doesn't specifically says there is no spending authorized. Do you need to say that? Why do you need to say that? If you don't,
You
if
the
can't,
absence
not with
of
the last
enough,
three
yeah,
sentences
right,
down
it's
there.
kinda contrary
accepting
to
it,
what-
Yeah.
Unless you
But
put some
I
in.
recall, those words are in street
All of them.
acceptances, as far as I know. They're always.
I'm looking at the May 2012 warrant. It's in every one. We did like 5 street
oh, so
acceptances.
maybe the exception is 33, not
Yeah.
32.
We never
Yeah,
tried
okay.
using
Yeah.
money.
Right.
Okay.
I had the
Maybe
same-
in
I
the
didn't remember
explanation,
either.
we just simply need to just make that statement. It's
We're not
it's
authorizing
not
any
typical,
spending.
it's not atypical to spend anything on this.
Okay.
But
Well, as a
it's,
practical matter, they can't unless it's appropriated.
sure,
So-
yeah.
Yep. Yep. Thank you.
All right, so moved, seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approval of Article 32? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. And now the building.
You'll be happy to know that Sue just wired me $5, so. Thank you, Sue. All right, so this article, and there's still, this is definitely still a lot of moving pieces going on here. But for those of you who didn't, I don't think I really got into it last week too much. This came about because of the Regional Communication Center. We came to a conclusion that the space was not going to work in Rentham that we had originally identified, which was in the main floor of the Rentham Public Safety Building. So we went out and searched for other sites, and we've identified this. We met with State 911 and came to the conclusion that we could also go out and purchase property or even lease property. So now we're going down a path, 2 parallel paths of potentially leasing this space for the Regional Communication Center. But now, what this is doing is also exploring whether the town of Norfolk wants to purchase that property and put, it's a 16,000 square foot building footprint, and whether or not we want to put our police station there. So what this article is saying is that we will borrow a sum of money, which we would obviously know before town meeting, a sum of money that will allow us to purchase that property, hire an architect and an engineer to put together the plans to build it, would also allow us to do the site work to receive an occupancy permit if the, and thought there is that the communication center may actually get ahead of us in their development because they have some grant money already available, and their layout is relatively easy. They're just building a room with dispatch center. Obviously, there's a lot of technology to be developed around that, but so they may get ahead of us. So my thought is to put the site plan development in here because the site needs to be finished, but then we could start receiving income. We could move the communication center in there, and then Norfolk would start receiving rental income from the dispatch center. Yeah, so purchase the property, architects, engineer, project manager goes along with that, and then do the site work in hopes of having, so you have a 16,000 square foot building, we would use a 4,000 square foot footprint, possibly has a mezzanine built into it, so it's potentially all the way up to 8,000 square feet would be identified to be used for the Regional Communication Center. And then you have 12,000 square foot footprint. We would, at least in our early kind of planning, we would use half an 8,000 square foot footprint for the public safety, for the police station. And we would have a mezzanine level, so potentially taking that 8,000 all the way up to 16,000 square feet of space for the public safety building. That would include a garage. It's a
Sallyport.
It would include Sallyport, but also have garage space. Maybe my terminology might be a little bit off, but it would have garage space, and then Sallyport would be the kind of secure area to bring prisoners in and out of. But we'd be able to keep the rest of the, maybe not the entire fleet, but we'd be able to keep the rest of the cars inside the building as well. So that would be, and then we would have, in the middle of the building, we would have, potentially, again, this is all very preliminary, we'd have 4,000 square foot footprint that would be available for future use, whether it's, DPW, or expansion of the police station in the future, expansion of the regional communication center. Another possible use is creating a regional lockup, because as some of these communications, the dispatchers get moved into regional communication, police stations now have to come to the challenge if, like, our dispatchers watch our prisoners. So, so we won't have that ability in the future. So Rentham and Plainville are going through that same process. So there's the potential that we build a regional lockup as well, which we would obviously get more income from. So that's the thought. It's very preliminary. I need to talk about this with the selectmen. I need to do a lot of negotiating between now and May 1st, when I have my selectmen's meeting, to try and get this all put together. There's also a slight chance that this negotiation doesn't go well and we go down a different path, but that would probably would be a future town meeting. But we think, very high level numbers. We think we can do this public safety building, the police station, in the $6 to $8 million range, rather than the, and these are older numbers, the 10 to 12 million range that we've talked about in the past for public safety. We would also have to look at so then we would have our old public safety building would be the fire station. We would have a slight police presence, but it would be mostly the fire station. We've certainly got to look at the garages and figure out a better way to keep the trucks and give them a little more room to work on. They literally are parking one fender over another fender, so we got to, whether it's expansion or a redo of the garage, but that would certainly be a much smaller cost. So we would put together a whole pro forma for this between now and May 1st is my goal, and then be prepared to talk about this at the May 13th town meeting.
Jack, question, why couldn't you relocate some of the resources for the fire to that location? Would that make sense? Like in some towns, they get, Walpole, I don't even know if they still have the old East Walpole Fire Station. And then
They have
you
a
get-
South Walpole and an East Walpole.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, that, I guess, could you
We could.
benefit from that as well? Maybe?
We could, particularly if Southwood gets built out with a big, large number of houses that we're going to want to have
Probably makes sense, you'd have probably
something
have
here.
to, yeah.
If we stay kind of the way, the demographics that we are today,
Yeah.
wouldn't, the chief wouldn't want to move things out of the center of town.
Sure, yeah.
Fire departments are different than police stations because fire departments respond from a central location
Yeah,
99% of the
that's true.
time.
Yeah, that's
Police
right.
departments are responding with patrol cars that are out on the road.
That's right, yeah.
So that's why we wouldn't move the majority of the fire station down to this
Okay,
location.
I get it, yeah. Makes sense.
Any estimate as to what you would want to put into the old fire station in terms of money to bring it up to a better standard?
No, I'm actually going to meet with an architect tomorrow to talk about this whole project. It's a person we've had engaged through the Regional Communication Center and also in our old project, and he's going to try and put together some numbers for me for the whole project. I could give you some unintelligent numbers, but I don't think that would be helpful.
Because we've got the issue there of the bays not being big enough for the trucks, inadequate facilities for women, and all those old issues that have been there for years would presumably want to be addressed.
Yeah, definitely. If we move the police out, clearly takes away a huge number of the problems that we have at that building. You know, the locker rooms, et cetera, because we have the, you know, we own the trailer, so there's, you know, locker room facilities for the staff that's on duty within the trailer. Whether or not we want to then move that into the police station, there would be empty offices that we could convert to locker rooms and other meeting rooms. You know, I don't think there's going to be, you know, it's not going to be a huge number, but I don't think, again, I don't want to start throwing around numbers that I'm kind of making up.
It's going to be, you know, I'll throw them. I mean, I figure it's got to be a couple $1 million going to that building to bring it up to speed, I would think.
I would hope not, but it depends on how far we want to go.
But even, I mean, you pick that number, that's still cheap relative to what the cost would have been to go new, as we were talking about a few years ago. Even if you add it to the 6 to 8, you're still coming in.
Yeah, 8 to 10, and
That's a good
you know,
number.
and the escalation costs are going up. You know, the numbers I've heard are 10% or so per year. The numbers the last couple of years have gone up for public safety construction. That's a number I'll feel more comfortable with talking about at town meeting after I talk to gentlemen tomorrow. But I've been told our old number is pretty out of date now, if we kept that the same.
Well, we were taking advantage, or would have been taking advantage of recession years, and
Right.
that window has closed, at least for now.
Yeah, the number that I keep coming back to me is about $400 per square foot is the construction cost for public safety facilities. The garage for the fire station should be lower than that.
Right.
The good news about going down, if we are able to do this, is, you know, we don't end up paying for a dispatch center. The regional communication center pays for that, and that was a big cost for us with the old public safety building.
Is there any risk that if we go ahead with this, all these agreements in place, REC is going to use this building and so forth, is there any risk that that agreement falls apart after we've committed to purchasing the building and all these renovations and so forth?
There's always a risk. The 4 town administrators are the board of directors for the regional communication center, and we voted the other day that this is our number 1 site. You know, we can't sign a contract to come here until there's a lease agreement, et cetera. But I did get them to commit that this was the number 1 site, and they would go down that path with us. The other unknown is the level of funding that we get from State 911 for the construction of that facility. We've got 3 years of grants that are north of $2 million. I'm not sure they reach $3 million, but and we find out this month. Not sure if it's April or May, but I think we find out soon how much the grant is for this year. So that, you know, we've asked for enough money to complete the project. Of course, we do that every year, and we're getting closer and closer. But there's a lot of technology, obviously, that goes into that project. It's all technology for the most part.
But a town can't pull out of, once they sign the agreements, they can't pull out of it without reimbursing the state. So there's been, in one case, there's a wreck that a town of 3 towns got together, built a wreck, got involved in it. One of the towns decided they didn't want to be in it anymore. And the state said, okay, fine. You have to pay us back millions of dollars in their fees to do that. And they did, because they really wanted out, but they had to pay it back. So I don't think there's any likelihood, particularly with the 3 King Philip towns, they've had such good relationships together anyway. I can't see that happening.
We're hoping to bring other, to grow the communication center afterwards. Our friends from
Right.
Walpole or Foxborough may
There's
join us
other
as well.
towns that might be interested in jumping in, depending on, annual costs and things like that. So I think, your expansion is going to be, primarily going to be coming from the rec. I don't think it's, anything else.
But is this mature enough, these plans to, this sounds like a great idea, but
Great.
there are no numbers, and there's a lot of moving pieces here, as you say. Is it, why don't we do this in the fall?
Because of the rec is under, the rec is under a timeline to get this done. We've got 3 years of grants now sitting in an account waiting for us to do this. We went through a process, they've hired an architect and done a lot of work at the public safety building. We did look at another tax title property, commercial property that Rentham has. They need to get that done. I think if this falls apart, Rentham will look, and I don't think it's a good idea, but Rentham will look at expanding their public safety building. And I would rather, from a Norfolk resident's point of view and employee's point of view, I'd rather have control of this in Norfolk. There's
Yes,
a lot
definitely.
of funky politics, and
Yeah, no, I think the idea sounds great. I just am concerned that, we just spent a fair amount of time looking at transfers and specific dollar amounts and kind of thought about those a little bit. Now, what would we be approving this evening for you? What would we do?
I don't think I really would want you to, you could approve this without a dollar amount, but it doesn't really mean anything. And you're going to have to take another vote to to approve a motion, I guess, with a dollar amount.
This is a motion for an override. Yes?
My thought is that we have a motion in the spring and that this is a borrowing. And then in the fall, we come back with construction funds. And that will be an override, and we'll not only have the construction funds, but we'll have these funds go into the override.
Okay.
So I can tell you the building's assessed for in the $700,000 range, the unfinished building and the parcel. Architectural costs on a $6 million building are in the 8 to 10% range. Site work is probably could be as bad as $250,000. So those are the numbers we're talking about for this spring.
Now, do the grants go toward that, or are the grants above that?
The grants will go to the Regional Communication Center, and it's for the build-out of their space,
So they don't impact that 6 to 8 million you're talking about will be our cost.
Be our cost,
for
and then
our
we'll
usage.
have a revenue source going forward that we can apply towards the debt service, or we'll have to think about how we do that.
Any ideas how much that revenue source would be?
20 to 50,000. I don't know.
So, small.
But you're still addressing an issue that the town was looking for anyway, in creating a public safety building with the police station separate from the fire station. You're still inside of this, you're still getting a building that the town has looked for years now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we're getting a public safety building, or we're getting a police station, sorry. Obviously vastly improved. It's a metal building with stone,
Base.
Foundation.
Stone foundation. It's a steel building under the metal building, obviously. We've had conversations already that there will have to be some improvements to the reinforcement of that building to make sure that it meets the standards that a dispatch center in particular would want to have, and certainly a police station too, but we need that dispatch center to withstand, just about anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it'll give us a police station that we desperately need. It'll give us, our dispatch center is pretty pathetic, the way it stands today. It's a one-seater, if you will. And it's, it's strung together over 40 years of adding screens. It's certainly professional and it works, but it's not up to today's standards. And it gives us a fire department, fire station that gives them the facilities that it's an improvement to their facilities. It's certainly not going to be a new facility, but it's going to be a lot better than, they're going to have more space, they're going to have space to store their equipment. We are going to have to, the chief has said, we need to improve that garage, and so we'll have to do that. We hope we can make some money in the building as well.
So town meeting approves this, let's say, and then we need an override. So the override fails. What then?
Same thing that's happened to us in the past. We end up paying for public safety, architectural and engineering cost out of the operating budget. We have
But more, that we've committed to a building that
the
we
rec.
own, or somebody's got to own for the rec.
yeah.
I suppose
I mean,
that's a
this is
risk you're gonna take doing anything on this, in respect to this. If it's presented properly, it's gonna minimize our overall expenses, because we potentially could draw in, get the income from the other towns on this, potentially Walpole, right, Rentham and Plainville,
Yeah.
sure. It would have to be really presented well to.
Yeah, I mean, dispatch is the most crucial part of public safety, absolutely, hands down. If dispatch doesn't work, nothing else works. So, I mean, you sell that part of it, and
This
that's
could be
easy to
your
sell
article,
because it's,
then.
because it is what, it's the part that's free, basically. And then you're getting something, like you said, that the town has needed for years. You're taking care of that problem at a very reduced cost. I did talk to Chuck, just because, not that I don't trust Jack, but I talked to Chuck anyway, and he's absolutely in favor of it, so.
I'm just worried about the contingency of the override, because town meeting will not be a problem. Town
No.
meeting will be the ones that hear this.
I agree with you.
Will understand the value of it. Town meeting, my bet is, would approve this, and then we go out to an override. The 5% of the town, at town meeting, knows what's going on. The other 25% that votes but doesn't have this information or doesn't care about this information is our problem.
That's the
No, I
truth.
agree.
That's the
I'm a-
truth.
I'm a three-time loser, so I know.
That's a high risk. It's a pretty high risk, and we're committed. It's not just something that Norfolk walks away from, but we've committed to something for other towns as well. And I'm just wondering what our exit strategy, it seems, we obviously can't decide that tonight, but it seems to me like a lot of thought needs to be given to an exit strategy should the override fail.
Well, you could have an override vote this spring and solve that. Overrides, it's been a couple of years, but my override questions, from my understanding, do not have to have a dollar amount in it. So we talked about this with the school. You could have an override to construct, to do what I talked about here, but then also construct the police building, the
Have
police
we ever done
facility.
that?
No, we've always had it with a dollar amount.
Yeah, I can't.
You know,
We're not selected on this one.
Well, then the appropriation would be contingent on a future town meeting. So, it's not just like you're creating an open check.
No, but I mean, just, okay. Where are the selectmen on this? Have they voted?
We haven't talked about the mechanics of the timing, and certainly haven't talked about Pat's question. They are all for going forward with this building.
And have they?
They know we need a police
Yeah,
station in
yeah,
particular.
yeah. But I mean, as you say, we've been down this path before, the override. What did we spend on the last round of plans? Somehow I remember 350,000 or something like that, but that may be way off.
We're spending, I don't know, we still have $30,000 of debt to pay off.
Could you go for an override just for purchase of the property and design first, and then
We
do a
could.
second override? I know that's a
Oh,
pain.
yeah.
That's a pain, because you still end up with the same risk. You could get the override for the purchase and design, at least you have that paid for, and then still lose the second override, although I think it'd be unlikely to, but.
Is there any way that you could do the override for the purchase of the building and then use the grant money to build it out for the rack, for the command center, and then look at what you have to do to put your people in there, to expand it, to build it out for, do you know what I mean? You get it in there.
Yeah.
You have the benefit, you have it now, you own it, and now you can figure out how to make it work. Is that,
I don't think Rick knows more about the grant, what the state will allow with grants, or, I don't think they would allow for construction of site, particularly site work.
They'll
okay.
they'll do some things, but they don't want to do the construction part of it. The site work would have to be done. The site work, if you've been up there, needs a fair amount of site work, so that would have to be done on our dime anyway.
But it's a better dime at 250 than 6 million.
Oh, God, yeah.
And to have it there and to adjust a building that we own and that we're getting and having for as a revenue stream, to then go back and say, okay, this is what we want to do to have the police out of the center, and, it's kind of going into it backwards, but it's starting to look like it might not go in at all the other way.
So we're talking about the public safety building, obviously, and I preface this with, we're going to have a lot of discussion about this on May 1st, so.
I think the one downside to that approach, or the one piece that might not work, is you mentioned earlier, we have to make changes to the building. I'm assuming that's, reinforce, et cetera. I don't think that's in your initial set of costs here. You were planning to do that as part of the overall construction.
Yeah.
So the rec wouldn't accept it,
Unless it was
even if
built
the
out.
grant money could be used just to fix up the portion for the rec. I don't think they'd accept the building as is. So either we'd be on the hook for some money ourselves to at least, bring it up to rec building code standards, let's call it.
Yeah.
Even if we weren't going to fit out the rest of it for the police station in the first stage.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, certainly the way we've applied for the grants, they're going to do some, the intent is, and we were awarded some money to do some construction. It's not just all
Okay.
IT work. It's,
Yeah.
it's, building a room and doing that. So it's,
Right.
so I don't know. You get into a gray area where you're talking about internal walls, external walls. I don't know the answer to the question about reinforcing the building, whether or not that would be allowed in the grant or not. I suspect we could make an argument that it would be. The communications entity also has the ability to borrow money and do, create a budget on their own as well. At the end of the day, the four towns end up funding the,
Right.
it's going to be like a King Philip. They're going to charge an assessment back to the towns to run the facility
Right.
operationally going forward.
To me, it sounds like sort of a coming together of events that could be very, could create a good opportunity for the town to obtain a couple of our objectives and see some cost savings overall. To me, it sounds like sort of the all-in approach, get one bite of the apple and get it done, would be a more effective way to do it. I mean, I know in previous years, it seemed more speculative or early on, and sort of what do we needed to come up with a strategy for the building, rather than this is a defined opportunity with a very clear objective. So to me, that's why it feels a little bit different in terms of, would you spend the architectural money and all of that and then back out again? Seems like this is more of a certain opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, Rob's coming in, without a lot of information from that's percolating. So.
It's more just a statement. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just how I.
I mean,
So where would this go from here?
When you start tearing it apart, it seems less certain.
The notion is that you would come in with a set of more detailed numbers and kind of a plan around an override, and then we would vote on, well, I guess we wouldn't vote on the override.
Well, I think-
We'd vote on the spending as,
I think that the whole discussion about, funding and potential override and borrowing in the future will be part of the May 1st discussion with the selectmen, because we haven't, I haven't put any thought, honestly, I haven't put any thought into that part of this project. And certainly would expect have a lot of input from the selectmen, because they get to make the decision. So I guess that'll be the first thing one of the first things that I'll talk about with them after talking about the cost of the project itself. Also go through this over the next couple of weeks with the Public Safety Building Committee, because it'll be ultimately their project. And then go to the selectmen with, these are a little bit better than back of the napkin estimates for the project. Now, how do we want to do the phasing of paying for it? Do we want to ask for all that money up front? Do we want to have an override and then another override? Or do we want to just pay for the whole project within the budget, which would be difficult to do? But we could.
My rough guess is it'd be about $600,000 or $700,000 a year, the early years, and because the way public debt is level funding on the principal with the interest starting high and going down, right?
Yep.
It's not level. So if you pick $10 million, spread that over 30 years, it's 300 grand plus 400 grand interest, 350 or something. You're talking 600 or 700 grand the early years,
Which would be difficult to.
which you could not, right? You're not going to find that kind of money in the budget.
No, we wouldn't, we certainly wouldn't. We could, the acquisition of the building, we might be able to if we had to. We'd have to make some cuts someplace
Right.
else. So if the
Spread that
overall,
out over 20 years, and
Yeah.
it's only 20 or 30 grand a.
I mean, I guess to answer your question, if, one approach would be, we go forward with it this spring, without an override, and then we go to the fall, have, come together with all of our architectural and engineering and maybe we've gone out to bid at that point. Go to town meeting, have that vote contingent on an override, and if it succeeds, we construct. If it fails,
You own a building.
we then have a building that we potentially resell if nothing else.
Or try again and
Or
do
we
this.
scale back
Worst
the
case, right.
project, yeah. No, that's
No,
Pat's number,
that's-
not mine.
Round number.
Where I came up with that is Jack said 6 to 8 for that building and all the improvements and so forth. And we will also need to do renovations to the existing building for the police. I just threw 2 million in for that, maybe it'll be $1 million, whatever.
That was
But,
my reaction.
We were thinking less.
well, okay, but, when you're at 8,
What's another?
What's
10?
another two?
go to 9. I mean,
Million?
there's
A
things
lot.
like that I've heard for years about that building, about the inadequacies of the internal structure as far as size of the bays for the fire trucks and that sort of stuff. So it's always sounded to me like it wasn't just a matter of painting the inside and, you've got a usable building. I'm assuming there'll be substantial, but, okay, make the 10 million, make the 10 million 8 million, and the 700,000 becomes 550 or something, but in round numbers, you're somewhere north of $500,000 the early years.
But the focus of this article is on the police and the dispatch. So
Right, that's the primary.
Right.
we should keep in mind that
4, 25,
the
and
fire
26.
department will need some tending to, but
I think so.
the idea, I guess, is that we would ask at this town meeting, we would ask to borrow 700,000 plus, call it 500,000 for the design work? Is that I mean, I don't want to get ahead of things, but just to understand where you think we might be voting the night before town meeting.
Yeah, granted, there's a lot of, having said, no negotiations have gone on, so I'm going into this
Right.
unarmed. But that's, again, the assessed value is 700 and some odd thousand. $200,000 to $300,000 of site work, and very rough estimate of $600,000 for architecture and engineering and project management.
So we could expect the night before town meeting to be voting on an article that asks the town to approve borrowing of on the, or between 1.2 and 1.5, round numbers, I know you don't like, but in order to pursue this specific article, and then, and in the explanation of it, we would probably say we would anticipate that an override would be required to
Complete it.
complete it.
Yeah,
That-
that's my thought. Again, haven't talked about it with the selectmen at all, so that's, well,
And frankly, if we were going to do an override anyway, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't be on the board, but my recommendation would be we override in order to push that initial borrowing back into, put that in the override.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
No,
so, okay.
I think I think that Jack indicated it, but
I thought
tonight,
exactly.
tonight
Why
we.
you're so smart.
Sorry. You guys, 110. So, not, at the town meeting, we'd be looking to borrow between 1.2 and 1.5 probably to fund these activities,
That's my understanding as of today.
with the anticipation that would probably roll forward.
See, but Arlie, what, you're talking to the town administrator who has not talked to his board about this, so don't, don't on town meeting floor say, well, the selectmen changed their mind the day before, because you think we're going one direction right now. We have not talked as a board about this. So actually, if you want to find out, you should come next, 2 weeks. It might be good for members of the advisory board to come to the meeting in 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever.
What meeting is that?
May
May
1st.
1st, the next selectmen's meeting. So we might have a more productive conversation there instead of trying to hash this out again on town meeting floor,
Yeah.
as we did last year
Sure.
on certain things.
All right.
Good, well, this is a lot of information, thank you.
Given that, what is it you're asking for tonight? Just
FYI.
nothing at this point.
FYI. More to come?
Got more than he bargained for as it is.
Yeah, so productive night. I won $5.
So this is just educational
Better get out
tonight.
of
There
here,
will be a
you'll win.
number
I
at
know,
some
another,
point.
for 9:30.
Do you think it's
Something
realistic that
specific.
you'll have the negotiations done by the next, or do you know?
I hope so, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
1.2 to 1.5 would be, I forget what I said before, 30 to, so it'd be like 40 or 50 grand, still conceivably within the realm of the regular budget.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it would only be for a year.
So you could, pardon?
Then they'd put it as part of the override, so it would only be that.
But then if,
Speculating a lot right now.
75,000 just on principal alone.
I'm figuring 30 years.
30 years for the site.
No, for the
Yeah.
building purchase.
And it would start high and taper off, so, but anyway, yeah. Still, numbers that we,
Absorbable.
yeah, that we could absorb.
Plus, you know.
And we wind up owning a building.
You could sell.
You can have some income coming in, too, from the rent.
I mean, yes, I mean, well, you'd
Well,
only
that's
have
only
income
if you
coming
get
in
the
if
whole
you
thing
spent
done.
together $6 million.
No.
No, if I do this and do the site work and Rex got to build out their
Okay, so-
4,000 square
okay,
feet.
all right.
Oh, that's what I
So-
said. I thought you said you couldn't do that.
Oh, you could, yeah, you
They
definitely
can build out the internal, we'd have to do the site work, which
Right,
I'm
but
putting into
that's-
this.
Right,
I
but
thought you were asking about the site
that's a
work.
doable, no. The site work's a doable number.
Yeah, I agree.
No, Lisa, they could just build their part of it.
Well, that's
and
what I
essentially
said.
leave the rest of it vacant.
Right, and then that
the-
makes, then it gives you a little bit more control going forward instead of walking the tightrope of, it's either you win this override or everything, it's all or nothing.
Right, that income will maybe not cover the debt service for the acquisition of the building, but it'll come
Right,
close.
if you're
Yeah,
20 to
it-
50,
Right,
is on the right planet, call it 30. That's getting,
that's still.
that's halfway there, more than halfway there in terms of the
Now, can the prison
acquisition cost of the
mitigation funds be
building.
used to pay that debt service going forward, or would the auditor be upset
No,
about that?
You can't have it pay debt service, you can have it pay for a capital project, so,
So going
Um,
forward with the, if you were able to win the override and go forward, could that money go toward, a portion of that be handled by that?
yeah, the construction or any capital,
We certainly
So the
have
site work
30,000
right
in
off the
capital
bat could
needs
be.
every year. Yep. take it out of
But
the left
unfortunately, we
pocket
can't-
and spend it out of the right.
Unfortunately, we
pocket.
can't appropriate that until the fall.
Oh, I know, I understand that.
Okay.
All righty, so all that can, attending the selectmen's meeting to hear more about this would probably not be a bad idea, but otherwise, I guess, when we will next hear, well, I don't know, I guess we'll just have to react to events as they happen. If I have to call a special meeting, then I'll do that.
Sure.
If it looks like we really need a meeting to discuss this, even though it'll be after our stuff has gone out.
Could you post for the first? So at least you could have a discussion among yourselves there, for those who show up.
Yeah, and if we don't get a quorum, that's a good idea. If we don't get a quorum, then we don't get a quorum. And there's not an official meeting. That's a good idea.
But you can still do some planning amongst the members that are there.
Does that sound like a plan?
So what
Anybody
are
have
we
any
saying, we're
concerns or
going
objection to
meet
that?
Or was the suggestion that we go to the selectmen's?
We'll
Have a meeting at the
we'll
same
have
time.
to do what we did at
Same
the
day.
joint, right? I'll have to call us to order as if it's an official meeting. It'll look like a joint meeting, but really it'll just be your meeting, and our agenda will be to listen to your meeting, basically.
Okay, so what time is that? Are we going to send out an email to let?
To figure out the other things on the
Okay,
agenda.
awesome.
All right, good.
Okay.
But it is the Thursday night, the meeting.
All right, sound good?
May 1st.
We may not have any business to actually conduct that night, but if we can get 5 just in case, that would be great.
I could probably, I'm sure we can finalize the transfers for that night too, I would think.
Oh, there you go. There's an incentive.
I gave him a draft tonight.
If you didn't want to come to hear about this building, you can come to finalize the transfers.
I'm not available.
Beijing that day?
London.
Thank you, Jack, this was really helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yes,
thank you
Yeah,
all.
it sounds like a great opportunity.
Yep.
I absolutely
Appreciate your work,
agree.
as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, thanks for that 19,000.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right. I am,
Tired?
I'm not aware of any other items on our agenda, unless somebody has something else they would like to discuss. May 1, we will post a meeting for us. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen, but if we can get it together, 5 of us, that would be great.
I don't have any conflicts, I can do that. I'm sure I can be there.
Okay.
What time, 7 is their meeting?
7 or
I'll
7?
Yeah,
let
but-
you know what time.
Okay,
Their agenda, you don't want to show up at the beginning, because they might have
right.
God knows what.
It'll be on TV, right?
You're on TV right now.
No, but I mean for that meeting, so you can
Yeah.
watch it on TV and say, yep, they're getting to it.
Yes.
Hop in the car, run down.
Should I move to adjourn?
Actually, I have a question
Oh.
before. When do we need the write-ups to you? The recommendations, when do you need them?
This weekend.
That's fine.
So we were going to get a
Saturday?
sample, I think Susan's going to send out previous year's recommendations, so we could sort of get a flavor. I know Lisa's new, and I have a bad memory,
Okay.
so that would be helpful, I think, just in terms of us drafting.
You still have your file from last year? Do you have your Word file?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe you could, that might be.
Yeah, that's a good
quicker.
idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
What is it?
Have
Have
them
the
email out his Word
too.
file
Can you just
with all
email them
the-
the Word file?
Oh,
I'll
right.
forget before I get home, but, yeah, just.
I'll leave it.
Are all the articles assigned?
The word file about it.
No,
No,
are they assigned?
the Word file, our recommendations from last
Okay.
year.
Or the
Yeah.
PDF, or whatever format you
No,
have.
Word is easier
would be
than
the
you
way
can-
to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Am I doing Articles 2, 3, and 4, or just 4?
Maybe we could send out a summary of who has what, too, maybe that would be.
Yeah, and I don't have anything, so. I don't think I have anything.
So maybe
You can have one of
Did
mine.
we assign anything to you in your absence?
I don't mind, honestly.
No?
I didn't see it.
Oh,
No,
that's
no, you
because
didn't.
At that time,
We
we
weren't
thought
sure.
you weren't going to.
Thought I was
be-
gone.
Yeah, we
I'm not
were.
able to make it, but I'll write up
Wishful
mine,
thinking.
21 through 25 or
Yeah.
26, I think. And in fact, I've got them mostly done, so I actually had a couple of questions, but I've got the email address to Cindy, so I'm going to just send her a note and try to fill in the blanks.
That one's- yeah,
And I do have
unpaid
an
bills
understanding that
will
if we do
probably be-
present ourselves with the
To wait.
proper amount of
And then-
you know,
Right,
but the question is-
information, then we're not going to have a
Yeah,
lot of...
you should do 2, 3, 4.
It can potentially cut down on 5 different people getting up there, so And then I've got some notes on Jan and Paul's too.
I
that
did
it'll
at some point.
take
I
into
did at
account
some
both
point, but
arguments,
then-
you know, the for buying it in, the tax, you know, implications if we,
So,
if we,
We're all
if we,
confused.
if we, you know, had it go the way that it looks like it's gonna go, so.
so Pat, I think there's a little bit of confusion about who has assigned what. So maybe if you had your notes from the night that we assigned them, rather than rehashing it here, maybe if you sent out the,
Send it to me when I send the rest of the stuff.
yeah. So everyone's on the same page.
As long as I'm on the same page. I have one page where I have my names written next to the articles, so I'm sure the rest of it is here somewhere, so, yeah, I can do that.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Who's going to be the next chairperson? Gonna need one soon. Okay. Now?
I move to adjourn. Was that what you were looking for?
Second.
Okay.
Moved and seconded that we adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. We are adjourned.